All right, good morning. We're back in session. You can have a seat. We're back in session, and defendant is present in the courtroom. When we left yesterday, I had to make a ruling on the admissibility of the knife that allegedly the defendant threw out of his car as he was approaching his home. I'm gonna find that the knife is relevant in this case, that it's not substantially prejudicial to the defendant, and deny the motion in limine for its admissibility.
You have to put something on the record.
Very quickly, please.
Thank you. Your Honor, we object to that. We find that based on case law, specifically Holloway versus State of Florida, which is 114-7-3-296, that when a nexus is too tenuous, such evidence is not relevant. We believe it's not relevant. We believe it's totally, it's just out there. It has no connection to the crime. We believe the connection is tenuous at best. So based on that case and our objection, we object.
Okay.
And we object based on all of our other pre-trial.
All right. Okay. You may proceed. Let's bring the jury in.
Now the jury is in the presence of court. Seated.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I begin by asking the same question. Did anyone get exposed to any information about this case while you were away from the courtroom? No. Thank you so much. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
You're still Josh Mott, right?
That's right.
Okay. Judge, may I approach the witness?
You may do so.
Thank you, sir. Investigator Mott, as we were speaking yesterday, we went through several dozen photographs that were taken by you during the course of your investigation. I'd like you to look at the items that I'm placing before you. I'm going to go through them by exhibit number and tell me if they're exactly what we saw on the screen yesterday. It's exhibit YYY.
Yes, sir.
You can just tell me at the end, or just at the end. Is it individually or composite? You can have a seat too if it's comfortable for you. States exhibit ZZZ. States exhibit AA, 4 A's. States exhibit 4 B's. States exhibit 4 C's. States exhibit 4 D's. States exhibit 4 E's. States exhibit 4 F's. States exhibit 4 G's. States exhibit 4 H's. States exhibit 4 I's. States exhibit 4 J's. States exhibit 4 K's. States exhibit 4 L's. States exhibit 4 M's. States exhibit 4 N's. States exhibit 4 O's. States exhibit 4 P's. States exhibit 4 Q's. States exhibit 4 R's. States exhibit 4 S's. States exhibit 4 T's. States exhibit 4 U's. States exhibit 4 V's. States exhibit 4 W's. States exhibit 4 Y's. States exhibit 4 Z's. States exhibit 5 A's. States exhibit 5 B's. States exhibit 5 F's. Is this an item that we did not see yesterday?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you tell us what these 3 photographs are of?
The neighboring residence to 317, it's the residence of 313 Covent Gardens.
Is this the residence where Tyshawn Jackson lives?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was this photograph taken by you at or about the time of October 23rd, 2013?
Yes, sir, it was.
Does it fairly accurately depict the residence at that time?
Yes, it does.
And with respect to State's Exhibit 4X's, there are 4 photographs on this board presented in a horizontal fashion. The lower right-hand corner, as you look at it, was not a photograph taken by you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you were not present when it was taken.
That's also correct.
But the other 3 photographs on the board in the lower left, the upper left, and the upper right were in fact taken by you
That's correct.
and reviewed yesterday during the course of your testimony.
Yes, sir.
Are all of these photographs, with the exception of the lower right photograph and 4X's, photographs that we reviewed yesterday, photographs personally taken by you, and do they fairly and accurately depict the scene during the course of your investigation at 317 Covent Gardens?
Yes, sir.
Judge, if there are no objections, the state would move everything into evidence just announced, except with the exception of 4X's.
Judge, the defense have no objection except for LLLL.
Okay, can you fish it out?
Yes, sir. I believe that was the objection they voiced yesterday about the diagram.
It is, Judge, it's a diagram.
All right.
That's the one.
Okay, same ruling.
And Judge, also based on our pretrial ruling motions regarding this issue.
Yeah. Over the objection, it will be admitted into evidence, but the same ruling applies as to LLL. The court made a preliminary ruling that the state is required to follow through with it.
You were asked, I think, on direct and also on cross-examination about the floors, the tile floors throughout the house, more specifically the bathroom, that they were dry when you entered the home.
Yes, sir, that's right.
Okay. And they were dry when you entered the home, right?
Yes, sir, they were.
And the first time you entered the home was at 6:20 p.m., is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. More than 12 hours, or about 12 hours after, about 9.5 hours after first officers responded on scene?
I know it was quite a long time. I don't exactly know the first time that officers got in the house, but I know it was quite a while.
Okay. The shower curtain liner that was found in the trash can outside, I made note during your testimony that it was still wet, that it actually was wet and it had been outside.
Well,
Is that
it was
correct?
Contained within the trash can with the lid on it, yes, sir.
Right. If it had been there a long time, would you expect that the moisture would have evaporated, at least to some degree?
Well, it would take quite a long time, given that how it was encased in the can.
Okay.
But eventually, yes, sir.
Okay. And as we talk about the vinegar smell, the kind of pinkish goo that was on it, let me ask you about testing for chemical agents. Is there any test anywhere that allows a scientific laboratory to look at a substance and tell you what that substance is as it relates to cleaners or fluids?
I'm sure with enough resources, yes, sir, there are.
Okay. But you're not aware of any at this point that will tell you, yes, this item's bleach, or yes, this item's Lysol, are you?
No,
Okay. And in fact, Florida Department of Law Enforcement doesn't do it,
they do not.
and they have a very advanced lab.
They do, yes, sir.
And the FBI doesn't do it either, do they?
Not to my knowledge.
I want to return to the cleaning of the bathroom floor and the wall there. This was a relatively clean house, correct?
I would say so, yes, sir.
Floors were clean, not a lot of debris on them.
Correct.
In fact, you spent a long time crawling across the bathroom floor, is that right?
Indeed, yes, sir.
Did you notice any other debris on the floor, anything that was just kind of laying loose in the grout?
No.
Okay. So the floors in the house were clean,
Yes, sir.
vacuumed and mopped fairly regularly.
It seems so, yes, sir.
When you sprayed the luminol on the whole floor didn't glow, did it?
No.
It just glowed in a particular area,
Yes, sir.
and that particular area had wipe marks through it.
Yes, sir.
Does that indicate to you that that area had been cleaned more recently than the rest of the floor?
Yes, sir.
Speculation.
Sustained.
And with respect to the whole wall didn't glow, right? Just particular portions of the wall flashed when sprayed with this Blue Star agent?
Yes, sir, that's right.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any
No.
cross? All right. May the witness be excused, or is he
Yes, sir.
subject? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Free to go. Well, why don't we take our morning recess? We'll take about a 15-minute break, okay?
All right.
Check on the crock pot.
May I proceed? I'll be glad to wait for the clerk if you wish.
No. In the interest of time, I want to have you go on.
Okay.
Adrian, whenever you get finished, just let me know, and then we'll put the corresponding matching numbers, okay?
Yes, sir.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Now, Investigator Mott, when we left off yesterday, I believe we were looking at a photograph or several photographs of cleaning fluids or cleaning containers found either in the home or in the exterior trash can of the residence at 317 Covent Gardens. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. You told us that by the time you entered the home around 6:30 in the evening on October 23rd, that the smell, if there was a smell present earlier in the day, it had dissipated by the time you arrived.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you notice whether the floors were wet or dry in the master bathroom?
They were dry?
They were dry at that time?
Yes, sir.
You were telling us also that as information became known to law enforcement throughout the course of this investigation, that it was shared with you so that you could conform your search to look for items of evidentiary value.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you learn at some point that the master bathroom area of 317 Covent Gardens had been cleaned?
I did.
Okay. If you would for a minute, talk with us about how it is that you search for evidence of cleaning, and then what it is that you saw with respect to this house.
I'm objecting to the phrase that had been cleaned based on your pretrial ruling.
You must wait till the question is asked before you object. Restate the question.
Tell us how it is that you search for evidence of cleaning, and then what it is that you found with respect to this house at 317.
Okay, now the objection.
Judge, objecting based on our pretrial motion, the court's ruling on whether or not anything was clean.
Okay, I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
In the instance of this bathroom,
Yes, sir.
the first and most obvious indicator to me that there had been cleaning is the style of the blood spots I found.
Explain that.
In that it appeared as if they had been wiped through partially. It didn't appear as blood droplets that are deposited normally. It seems that something had interfered with them. And I inferred that to be a cleaning process because it simply looked like they had been wiped away, lightened, and
Okay. And, sorry, I'm trying to get to a particular slide in my slideshow. Give me just one moment. Judge, if we could have access to the screen, please. Investigator Mott, I'm showing you what's been marked PPP from yesterday, Master Bath 01, according to your sticker. Is this one of the things that you just said when you talk about cleaning?
that's exactly right.
Explain to us what you see here that shows you or
In that you can,
suggests to you.
Proper expert testimony.
Well, overrule.
Show us what you see here that suggests that a cleaning had occurred.
what jumps out to me in this picture that shows me that it's been cleaned is that the blood spot is not uniformly oval or has a uniform shape. Instead, it's been broken up. It has cracks through it, and then you can see discoloration beneath it, all right, that is lighter, and that tells me that it's been diluted by something as if someone was wiping through it to try to clean it.
When you conduct an examination such as this for blood evidence, I recognize that you go around the room and you take a visual examination. Are there any chemical agents that would help you locate blood, and does it play into your conversation about cleaning?
Yes, there are.
Okay. Talk with us about that for a minute. Just give us a general thumbnail sketch of what you're thinking.
At the conclusion of a visual search for blood that yields findings like this photograph, then I transition into using a chemical that causes very, very fine, small trace amounts of blood to glow in darkness, and it gives us the ability to see things that you would not normally see in visible light like this.
What is that agent called? What's that chemical called?
It's called Luminol, and it also has a brand name of Blue Star.
What is that specifically? How does it work?
Without having the ability of a chemist to explain, it reacts with some of the compounds that are in blood, and it generates light. It luminesces.
Can you see it with the naked eye?
You can, yes.
Can you see it in daylight or under illumination, or is it something that has to be viewed under certain conditions?
It needs to be viewed under darkness,
Complete darkness.
complete darkness.
Tell us how it is that you apply Luminol or Blue Star and what reaction it has to blood.
It is mixed with distilled water so that it's in a liquid form from a powder or tablet form. Once it's dissolved in the water, then it is activated, and it's active for several hours. And it is sprayed from a simple spray mister bottle. It's sprayed onto your area of interest.
One of those little squeeze handle sprayers?
Exactly.
And did you spray Luminol or Blue Star in the home at 317 Covent Gardens?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and where did you spray it specifically?
In the master bathroom, the master bedroom, as well as the living room and garage.
Okay. With respect to the living room and garage, did you have any chemical reactions that would suggest the presence of blood?
No, sir.
Okay. When I say suggest the presence of blood, tell us what reaction exactly occurs.
The reaction of this product with blood and many other things that it reacts to all reacts in the same color, but it's the style in which it reacts that helps us lean towards a presumption of whether or not something is blood. And what I mean is when it also reacts with things like bleach and cleaners and lots of other things, but when it reacts with those things, it does it in a quick manner, sort of a flash, and then it fades very quickly. When it reacts with blood, however, it has a sort of a dull but continuous glow that lasts much longer, around 30 to 60 seconds.
And in the living room and garage area, you said that you had no reaction at all.
Nothing that was remotely suggestive of blood.
Okay. And as you proceed into the bedroom and the bathroom area, did you have a reaction that was suggestive of blood?
There were some areas that gave me enough concern that I wanted to use. Luminol is a searching method. It's not a presumptive test for blood. And so it helps me search for areas that I would want to then expose to more of some form of at least presumptive / confirmatory test. And so there were areas in the bathroom that I located that I wanted to test further. However, having deployed this entire method, I located no additional blood in the home.
What did you locate as it came to the master bathroom?
What I could appreciate on the tile floor and the walls were wipe marks.
Explain that to us a little bit better.
So if you were to take a glass shower door, for example, that has soap scum on it, for example, and you wipe through it, and you see that haziness, and you imagine wiping it with a washcloth or whatever, you would create circular wipe marks as you wiped something, okay, and you would see that texture. Now, if you take that kind of image, but you translate it into the monochrome environment that is using luminol, it's darkness, but you see this faint blue glow. It appears in that kind of texture.
Okay. And as this glowed out to you, you said that you saw wipe marks?
Yes, sir.
Could you describe them for us?
Their location, or?
Their location, their size, their shape?
Their size and shape approximated to me. It looked like someone had some kind of a washcloth or something and was wiping in a typical circular fashion as I'm demonstrating, about that size throughout. And I saw it about the tile floor, in roughly the center area of the tile floor of the bathroom, as well as on some of the door jambs and the wall that we saw where actually where the bloodstains were located, along the tub there.
If you were to approximate how much of the tile floor had been wiped when it glowed back to you, approximately how much of the floor had been wiped?
I think roughly half.
Okay. And I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit U. Can you see some of the area in this photograph? Or excuse me, I'm only showing you U, two U's. Can you see some of the area in this photograph that had been wiped?
Yes, you can. Some of it is the tile floor. It's the bottom two tiles that we can see there.
The ones closest to the bottom of the frame?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And also the area where you can see the stick-on scales, right at the little bulkhead between the bathtub and that linen closet that's beyond there.
Okay, those are two areas in this photograph that did appear to have a chemical reaction for the presence of cleaners.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you also saw wipe marks within that area.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Investigator Mott, is there a way to document this blue glow or this blue flash that comes from the reaction as it relates to blood or chemical cleaning for luminol and blue star?
In addition to our observations, photography would be the preferred method.
Tell us a little bit about how that photography is done.
In this setting, it's a photograph that's accomplished in total darkness. So it's, you could liken it to trying to take a picture of the moon at night,
In what way?
in that you have much less light much less or no light, compared to when you would normally take a picture, you would need good light.
Is that a difficult photographic circumstance?
It is.
Were you qualified or able to take a photograph like that in 2013?
I had not received specific training. I was aware of the basic concept of how to attempt it, but it's not something I had previously had a need to.
Did you have difficulty taking a photograph of this very fast reaction in the bathroom?
I was not able to accomplish a photograph that depicts this clearly.
Okay, and so much like taking a photograph of the moon, it was blurry and not able to be seen clearly.
It was total darkness, actually.
Okay. How quick is the flash when we're talking about cleaning?
This reaction that it has with the contaminants, if you will, not blood, it happens immediately upon applying it and fades within a second or two.
And so there are no photographs that currently exist that would show this reaction, but you personally observed both the flash and the wipe marks through this area of the floor and the walls in the bathroom.
All of that is correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know the name Dave DeWeese?
Yes, sir, I do.
And how do you know that name?
He was a coworker of mine for many years.
In the crime scene investigative unit?
Yes, sir.
Did he work this scene with you at 317 Covent Gardens?
He did assist me in a few ways.
Okay, and did he assist you primarily in the taking and lifting of latent fingerprints within the home?
Yes, sir, he did.
Okay. As it relates to the taking and lifting of latent fingerprints, and we'll discuss it mostly with him, but is there something about the taking and lifting process that allows you to see other suggestions of or evidence of cleaning within this bathroom?
In this instance, it was the powder that we use that adheres to fingerprints, it adheres to other things as well, and so it accentuated these marks.
Were you able to see white marks in the black powder that was used?
Yes, in some areas, yes, sir.
Okay. And you personally observed them?
Yes, sir.
You told us yesterday about the electronics taken from the home, the computers, the game machines, essentially anything with a hard drive that could be used, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You told us also about the towel hook on the back of the door in the master bathroom and the lack of damage to the wall. And you told us also about the lack of broken glass or ceramic on the floor in the living room area.
Yes, sir.
All of these things were asked of you, investigators asked you to look for them in response to information they received during the course of their investigation, right?
That's correct.
In addition to the cleaning that we've just discussed.
Also correct.
Okay. Were there other things in the home that you collected simply because you believe that they might be relevant to this? For instance, did you collect baseball bats, golf clubs, brooms, shovels, rags, work gloves, trash bags, buckets, cleaning agents?
All of those things, yes, were collected.
Were all of them visually inspected for the presence of blood?
Yes, sir, they were.
Were some of them sent on for further testing?
Yes, sir, they were.
Did you also collect water bottles from the home that were laying out?
We did. I did.
Were those items collected for fingerprint testing?
Yes, sir.
Did you search or did you dust or search for fingerprints on the refrigerator handles?
It was done by Mr. Deweese.
By Deweese?
Yes, sir.
And how about garage door openers or buttons on the garage door?
Yes, sir.
You told us yesterday that you pulled drain traps and collected liquid for the presence of bodily fluids or blood specifically.
Yes, sir.
Did you also swab the handles on all of the doors in the house?
The knobs of the shower stalls,
Okay.
those kinds of things, sink faucets and whatnot.
Basically the places that people might touch.
Right.
Approximately how many items of evidence were retrieved in this case in total?
A few hundred?
Would over 600 be a good approximation?
Yes, sir.
Fair to say that most of those items had absolutely no forensic value and were no evidence of anything?
I would agree.
Yesterday we talked a good bit about blood analysis, and we even talked some about DNA. You told us some about secondary standards. What's a good primary standard for DNA?
A really good primary direct standard is the collection of the cells within the inside of your cheek. We call it a buccal swab.
Can you tell us how?
Buccal means cheek.
Sorry.
So it's a swab, just like the things that I've described, collecting the blood stain. That stain swab is used to scrub the inside of someone's cheek, and when we do that in their presence and we identify who they are, we would call it a primary standard because we take it directly from them as opposed to something we think and reasonably believes would belong to them, like this toothbrushes. A direct standard, something that I would take directly from a person.
Were many buccal swabs taken in this case?
Yes, they were.
Were they then sent on to the lab through your office, but then sent on to the lab for further testing and analysis as it relates to items collected from the home?
Yes, sir.
There are some limitations to the results you get for fingerprints and DNA when they return from the lab. Primarily what I'm speaking about is a temporal connection to any event. Can you explain to us what that means?
It simply means that if I put a fingerprint on this water bottle that I have in front of me and that it sits somewhere, and sometime in the future I lift a fingerprint off of it, I have no way of knowing when it was deposited.
Could have been there a day, could have been there 3 weeks.
Correct.
So somehow that fingerprint has to be made relevant, is that correct?
Certainly.
Okay, and in this particular case, as it relates to the submission of items of evidence to the laboratory for analysis, can you tell us what decisions were made about making those items relevant, and what decisions were made about the particular testing of those items?
We did so based on whether or not whether or not we could tell that there was blood related to that item, such that we would have a reasonable degree of certainty that it was related to the event that happened in the home.
Say that another way. If there was no blood, then?
If there was no blood on it, then we weren't as interested in it because we could not know that it was related to that event.
If there was no blood, it could have been sitting there for weeks?
Exactly.
So many of these things, like the shovels, the rakes, the rags from the garage that we talked about, they didn't go to the lab for additional testing because they didn't have blood on them.
That's correct, sir.
Is it possible for an item like a shovel or a rake or a rag to be in a home and get a fingerprint or a sample of DNA left on it?
Certainly.
Unassociated with a crime, right?
Correct.
Okay, so it wouldn't be uncommon for the homeowners or even their guests to leave evidence behind on these items, like a rake or a water bottle or a rag, correct?
That's right.
But as far as the testing goes in this case, those items weren't necessarily forwarded to the lab unless you could get some sort of time connection to them, right?
Exactly.
And the time connection you were looking for in this case was the presence of blood.
Yes, sir.
Throughout the course of your examination in this home, did you find any evidence associated with Tyshawn Jackson's recent presence in the home?
No, sir, we did not.
Throughout the course of your investigation in this case, did you find evidence that was inconsistent with the defendant's version of what occurred in the home?
Yes, sir.
Investigator Mott, it's going to take me a second to get to the end of the slideshow here, but I'd like to show you the final two slides in this sequence of photographs. In addition to your work in examining the home and this physical location, were you later called to examine and photograph the defendant for certain characteristics of measurement?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay, could you explain to us what you did and for what purpose?
I was tasked with documenting the size of his feet.
Were you aware that some boots had been pulled from a dumpster in Seminole County?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay, and that the size of his feet might be relevant in relating those boots back to him?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you what's been marked MMMM. Is that your photograph, sir?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, is that the defendant's foot on a scale?
It is.
Okay, and could you read essentially what size his foot is there?
7.5.
Okay. Did you measure both feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is this his other foot?
Yes, sir.
NNNN depicts a man's foot on a scale. Is that the defendant's foot?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, and what size is that foot?
7.5.
Okay. Judge, if I could have just one moment, please.
Yes, sir.
Investigator Mott, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit D for identification purposes. If you take a look at this box and tell us if you recognize it by its outer container and the writing thereon.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Can you open the box but not display it to the jury at this time? Do you recognize the item contained inside?
Yes, sir, I do.
Could you describe to us what it is without talking about its size or its physical characteristics?
It's a fixed blade knife.
And how did you come in possession of that fixed blade knife?
I received it from Deputy Maldonado.
Were you informed that it was retrieved in the proximity of 317 Covent Gardens
Yes, sir.
on the day of October 23rd, 2013?
Yes, sir.
Did you collect and safe keep this item for the purposes of the trial in this case?
I did.
And it has been sent to the laboratory at FDLE for further biological analysis?
Yes, it has.
Is it substantially the same shape and condition as the last time you saw it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Judge. I don't have any other questions. I'm going to take this off the screen.
Thank you.
Would you like to do announcement?
Yeah, why don't we do that at this time?
You want to go one by one, you just want the last
Well, the reason I think we're going to have to do one by one is because one did not go in a sequence, so go ahead and do them one by one.
I have 3Y is 39. 3Z is 40. 4A is 41. 4B is 42. 4C is 43. 4D is 44. 4E is 45. 4F is 46. 4G is 47. 4H is 48. 4I is 49. 4J is 50. 4K is 51. 4L is 52. 4M is 53. 4N is 54. 4O is 55. 4P is 56. 4Q is 57. 4R is 58. 4S is 59. 4T is 60. 4U is 61. 4V is 62. 4W is 63. 4Y is 64. 4Z is 65. 5A is 66. 5B is 67. And 5F is 68.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Investigator Mott, were you the lead crime scene analyst for Volusia County Sheriff's Office in this case?
Yes, sir.
And when you went to the house, you were there for, I just want to recap, you were there for about 4 straight days.
That's right.
And there were other crime scene analysts who assisted you in your procedures inside the house, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that would be Investigator DeWeese,
Yes, sir.
Deputy Ray, Deputy Hill, Deputy Bethay, and Deputy Bush.
Yes, sir.
Were there any other crime scene analysts who assisted you inside that residence during those 4 days?
No, sir.
Was there also a representative from Florida Department of Law Enforcement who may have walked through the house with you?
Yes, sir.
And there are other deputies coming in and out of the house, correct?
Investigative personnel, but,
From the sheriff's office?
right, yes, sir.
So the pictures that we saw, you went in, you did a walkthrough of the house, and then you took all the photos, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then when you located what you believed to be spots of blood, you labeled those with the labels underneath.
Yes, sir.
Then after that, when I say you, I mean you or other crime scene analysts went and did searches for fingerprints
Yes, sir.
and put the powder around.
Right?
And that's when and during this process, you're collecting the items, you're rolling up carpets, you're taking up the baseboards and the traps for the sink, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you're taking all this stuff out. When was the house released back to the family?
At the conclusion of our work on the 4th day.
4th day. But then you went back in early November 2013, correct?
Keep up your voice, okay?
Yes, sir. What was the question? I'm sorry.
The question was, you went back to the residence in early November 2014 for another search warrant.
Yes, sir.
Now, with regard to the picture of Master Bath 01, which was that spot of suspected blood that you said may have been wiped through,
Yes, sir.
let's talk about that for a second. like a fingerprint, you don't know when that spot of blood was placed on that wall.
Correct.
And you don't know under what circumstances that spot of blood was placed on that wall.
Correct.
And that wall was paint, correct?
I'm sorry?
That wall it was a painted wall, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if it was an enamel paint at all?
I do not.
With regard to the evidence of cleaning in the bathroom, with regard to putting out the fingerprint powder,
Yes, sir.
was your testimony that was in the shower area?
Can you be more specific? What?
You testified on direct that you saw visually evidence of cleaning in the bathroom after the fingerprint powder was put down.
Yes, sir.
Okay, where was that in the bathroom?
In the areas of the floor and the tub, yes, the walls.
In the tile of the tub, in the tub area where the shower was?
Yes, sir.
So, but we don't know who did any type of cleaning,
I did not watch anyone do the cleaning.
and we don't know when that cleaning occurred. There's no time frame on that.
That's correct.
And this is a residence where 4 individuals were living.
Yes, sir.
And it's quite possible that all 4 individuals would use that master bathroom at some time.
It is.
Now, you also talked about limitations in fingerprints, limitations in DNA. You said that there was no evidence that Tyshawn Jackson was in that house.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that Tyshawn Jackson could have entered that house, walked through that house, sat down, had a drink, watched TV, use the bathroom, and not leave any fingerprints?
It is possible.
Now, in the master bathroom, there was a pair of men's underwear on the floor and also a gray shirt on the floor, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you saw those were dry and there was no indication of blood on those items.
That's correct.
And there are tile floors throughout the house except for the master bedroom.
And the other bedrooms.
In the other bedroom, correct. And the tile floors that you testified were all dry when you came in.
Yes, sir.
There was a red garden hose outside, and that hose was dry and there was no water dripping out of it.
Correct.
In the outside, there was a blue trash can. You don't know what day garbage day is in Deltona, do you?
No, sir, I do not.
And you don't know when those 3 bags of garbage were actually placed in that trash can outside.
No, I do not.
And also, you don't know when that shower curtain was placed in that trash can outside.
That's true.
And the shower curtain was on the bottom of the trash can,
That's correct.
and everything else was on top of it.
Yes, sir.
You testify that when you opened up that trash can, you could smell cleaning or vinegar, is that correct?
No, I testified that as I opened the shower curtain liner, I smelled cleaning agents and vinegar.
That after you took everything out of the trash can and pulled out the liner, opened it up.
Yes, sir.
And was it very distinctive?
It was a reaction to me, so I didn't sit and ponder it. I said, oh, that smells like cleaning agents or vinegar.
Okay, something that your nose would just pick up.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you walked through the house, you didn't smell that same smell in the house at all, did you?
No, that's correct.
Now, the trash bags, they had other items of trash in there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Regular household items that a family of 4 would dispose of?
Yes, sir.
And the bags were dry on the outside but wet on the inside.
In some areas, yes.
And wet on the inside could have been from just regular household trash that is wet or leaks or degrades, correct?
That is correct.
There was a kitchen trash can in the house. I didn't hear any testimony about that, so I assume there was no evidentiary value of that kitchen trash can.
That's correct.
Now, the hall bathroom where the gauze was found from the trash can,
Yes, sir?
there was, on that kitchen sink, there was a tube that looks like Johnson & Johnson's first aid cream. Do you recall that?
The kitchen, or are you referring to the
In the
bathroom?
bathroom.
In the
Hall
bathroom? A Johnson & Johnson's what?
Like a first aid cream bottle?
I don't recall specifically that brand or that style without looking at the photos, but,
Okay. I'll come back to that then.
okay.
But in the hall bathroom, there was nothing of consequence or nothing of evidentiary value besides that gauze you pulled out, which is not really linked to any type of crime.
Apart from that, the items we collected as secondary standards, I would say no, sir.
Besides the secondary standards from the toothbrushes that were in there.
Yes, sir.
Now, in the master bedroom, there was that bifold closet door where you found what could be spots of blood. Besides that bifold door and the door leading into the bathroom, there was no other blood found anywhere at all in the master bedroom.
Yes, sir.
Now, in the master bathroom, you collected 19 stains of value, or spots of value, correct?
Can you tell me what you mean by of value?
Well, you marked 19 different red stains.
Yes, sir.
And your job is to document, photograph, and collect, but not to analyze or come to any conclusions on what something is.
That's correct.
The master bathroom was missing, as you said, an interior shower liner, correct?
Yes, sir.
You don't know if the residence even had an interior shower liner in the master bathroom.
I never was in the residence and observed one there, no, sir.
And was there an interior shower liner in the hall bath?
I don't recall if there was, I don't recall what style liner that was.
Did you take the shower liner that you found in the bottom of the trash can and see if it would fit in the master bathroom?
No.
Now, with regard to the Blue Star application, how many times have you applied Blue Star prior to October 23rd, 2013?
I would estimate, in a case setting or training setting? What are we referring to?
Both.
I would estimate half a dozen times in casework and probably as many more in a training setting.
So you had training on how to apply and then photograph the reactions.
Training on how to apply and appreciate its reaction.
When you say appreciate the reaction, are you talking about photographing it?
No, I mean observe it and recognize it and distinguish or begin to have a familiarity with where I described how you would distinguish the difference between what should be blood and what could be contaminants.
Did you have any training at all about how to photograph the reaction once you apply the Blue Star?
Not in any formal setting, no.
So the Volusia County Sheriff's Office did not give you any training on that?
Correct.
Now, isn't trying to photograph the reaction an important part of just the process of applying Blue Star?
Certainly.
Now, Blue Star reacts to blood, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it also reacts to cleaners,
Yes, sir.
such as bleach, such as maybe Lysol.
Yes, sir.
And it also reacts to other items,
It does.
such as fruit juices, vegetable juices?
It reacts to many things.
Are some of the things fruit juices, vegetable juices?
I believe so.
Commercial oils,
I believe so.
varnishes?
I'm not certain on varnishes, but
How about glues, insecticides?
I'm not certain with that specificity.
Okay. How about enamel paint?
I'm not sure if an enamel makes it react.
But you can have reactions to a number of things that are not blood.
Yes, it's a searching tool. It's not a confirmatory test. Yes, sir.
So when you applied the Blue Star, and the search indicated possible cleaning, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you can't say if it was cleaning, when it was cleaned,
That's correct.
or who cleaned it,
Also correct.
or how it was cleaned, such as a mop or a rag or a towel.
Yes, sir.
And also, we don't know the timeline of when any of this cleaning occurred.
Correct.
Yeah, some cleaning on the floor could have occurred prior to or after cleaning maybe on the wall.
It could have.
So it could have been separate instances.
Yes.
Do you recall entering the house when you walked through it, seeing electronic air fresheners plugged in?
Yes.
And I believe when you first went in there, they were still running, weren't they?
Yes.
Did you collect those or test what the liquid was inside those?
No.
With regard to fingerprints, you testify that you don't know when a fingerprint was ever left on an object or in the residence, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's a lot of items that you would think would be conducive to collecting a print that sometimes a print doesn't show up on,
That's true.
like a piece of metal or a piece of tile.
Yes, sir.
And a latent lift is different than a print, correct?
You're going to
if
have
you-
to clarify that for me.
If you're dusting for fingerprints and you see something that could be a latent and you lift that could come back as not a print or not have enough characteristic to be a fingerprint, correct?
There's a couple points that I would have to clarify.
Please do.
In that the word latent means not visible to the naked eye, not plainly visible. So that's how I would have to differentiate what you're asking.
So if you
But
have
I think-
lift cards,
I think I can answer what you're asking is that if I may lift something which may not end up being of value as a fingerprint.
That's
may not
exactly
be
what it is.
identifiable. And that is also true, yes, sir.
thank you for clarifying that. Well, you wrote a rather extensive report in this case,
Yes, sir.
and there is a preface in your report regarding the blood. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to ask you about that preface, if you could read it to the jury, but I want to make sure your memory is refreshed before I do that.
Okay.
Okay. Judge, may I approach the witness?
You may?
Investigator Mott, if you could read your preface to yourself.
Judge, before the witness reads it out to the jury, I'd object to hearsay and ask the necessity for the publication.
Well, he can't read it to the jury. You can ask him questions about it. The objection is sustained.
Thank you.
Have you had a chance to read your preface?
Yes, sir.
Please tell me, why did you make that preface in your report?
It's a preface that I feature in any report in which I'm going to refer to something as blood, because I'm not a lab person, so I'm not the one at the bench. I'm not the one qualified to make a final determination as to whether something is blood or not.
Okay, please tell the jury what your preface.
My preface is that I refer to blood in a report, but I don't do so based on scientific analysis or confirmation. Rather, its general appearance and my training experience recognizing blood based on its physical characteristics and color.
And also that your report does not include a reconstructive analysis of the blood stain or blood pattern in this case.
Yes, sir.
Judge, may I have a moment, please?
Yes, sir.
Judge, no further questions.
Any,
Before you want to look at the photograph? Yeah. I'll put it there if you want.
Yes, please. Yeah, Judge, I take that back. I do have a couple questions
Sure.
on a photograph that we talked about earlier.
very well.
One second, put it up for you. Yeah. Judge, I think we're connected. If you could turn on the screen. I thought.
Okay.
It's not one of your boards. It is. Show the board. Yeah. There you go. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Investigator Mott, this is a picture of the hall bath, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And that is a picture of the sink and countertop of the hall bath.
Yes, sir.
Next to the, looks like Crest toothpaste, there is another tube. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir, I do.
Is that looks like a first aid tube or some type of first aid cream?
I would say that it certainly could be, but I would want to try to zoom in on it before we could probably zoom in and read it, looking at the JPEG of that, but from this vantage point, I can't say for sure what it is.
Thank you. Judge, can I get some evidence here?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Nappy, you can probably, we've zoomed in here.
I turned it off.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge.
You have it already?
Yes, sir.
I would agree that I can make out enough to be confident that it's some kind of first aid cream, yes, sir.
In fact, it says first aid on it.
Exactly.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Investigator Mott.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, State.
All right, thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Investigator Mott, I want to just ask you a few questions real briefly. As it relates to the disclaimer in your report, you're not a laboratory analyst, right?
That's correct.
Your job is to search for the presence of things you think may be evidentially related to the case or possess independent evidentiary value, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so you can't make, at the time that you conduct your investigation, you can't make any conclusions at all about whether an item is blood.
That's correct.
But in this case, everything that we've discussed has already been to the lab and come back, and so you're certain, as you sit here today, based upon the work of someone else, that it is in fact blood.
That's true.
Counsel, can I just have a sidebar just
Sure.
real quick?
When prints become visible, at that point, we lift them with a clear tape.
Okay, and then after you lift them with a clear tape, what do you do?
They are placed on a fingerprint card and then submitted to our ID section for identification. Also, in this process, prior to lifting the print, once it's identified, we'll mark it and take a photograph of it to document where it come from.
Do you conduct these fingerprint lifts both on scene and sometimes back within your sterile space at the Volusia County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, we do.
And did you conduct them both on scene at 317 Covent Gardens as well as back within your sterile space at the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Talk with us, if you will, before we go there. Investigator DeWeese, have you had an opportunity to review photographs associated with this case?
Yes, sir, I have.
I'm approaching with what's been marked 5Qs. It's a composite exhibit of 2 items. Do you recognize the disc that's a part of 5Qs?
Yes, sir, I do.
Did you mark that with your initials this morning?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you recognize the paperwork so associated?
Yes, sir, I did.
Are those a printout of the photographs contained within that disc?
Yes, they are.
And you reviewed all 4 of those photographs this morning, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do they fairly and accurately depict the scene as you worked it around the time of October 23rd, 2013?
Yes, sir, they do.
And are there 2 diagrams in here as well that were created either by you or Investigator Mott as it relates to the house?
Yes, sir, it is.
Judge, Exhibit B in this composite is a item that's been previously objected to by the state, subject to their, or by the defense, excuse me, subject to their prior objection. State would move item QQQQQ into evidence of state.
Can I see them, please?
Judge, the defense does object to the 1 diagram in there, and I like to also add, in addition to our earlier objection, that it's cumulative now. It's already been in.
Is B one of the items that's in one of those big boards?
Yes, sir.
Why do we need 2 copies?
We don't. I burned the disc a couple of days ago, and so I can burn a new disc without that. But it's already in evidence.
I understand, but we don't need multiple copies of it.
I'll tell you what, then I'll withdraw my request to put that item in, and I'll simply use the photographs that have already gone through Josh Mott and not discuss the diagrams.
That'll be fine.
Thank you. If you'll give me just a moment to turn to the photographs with Investigator Mott.
Sure.
Okay. Investigator DeWeese, did you create the overall sketch of the residence at 317 Covent Gardens?
Yes, I did.
So the bird's eye view of the house, that's your actual work?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Investigator Mott created the sketch of the bathroom itself, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, of the area of the home, as it relates to the area of home, where did you look for fingerprints within that residence?
Basically everywhere in the residence, anywhere that would commonly be touched, be it light switches, tabletops, walls, dressers, counter space, basically everywhere, doors, doorknobs.
How about water bottles or anything that was sitting out on the counter?
Yes, water bottles.
And did you use the method by which you've previously explained for lifting prints? Did you use that method in trying to find prints in this residence?
Yes, I did.
Were you able to lift several fingerprints or what you believe to be fingerprints from the home? I should probably say latents.
Yes, I did. I believe there was 14 lifts from inside the residence.
Okay.
Investigator Deweese, I'm approaching with State's Exhibit 5 Eyes. Take a look at that item. Tell me if you recognize it.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And by its outer packaging and the writing thereon, you recognize it as a fingerprint lift that you made in the home of 317 Covent Gardens on or about October 23rd, 2013.
Yes, sir, it is.
Is it in essentially the same condition as you saw it at that time?
Yes.
Tell us, please, if you will, where this fingerprint, where this latent lift was taken.
It comes from the rim, the edge of the sink, the north sink, in the master bathroom.
Okay. I'm going to show you two photographs. Judge, can we have the screen on, please? Okay. I'm showing you what was previously entered with Investigator Mott. It's marked UU and VV. Is this a photograph of the master bathroom?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. In the right-hand side of the photo, we see some tile associated with the shower area. We have some black marks on it. Could you tell us what that is, please?
That is fingerprint powder that was deposited on there during the processing.
Okay, so you've already processed that area for fingerprints.
That's correct.
Okay. Now we have two sinks in the master bathroom, both in photograph UU and photograph VV. Do we also see black powder on the sinks in the toilet and the countertop as well in the bathroom?
Yes, you do.
And again, it's already been processed by you for fingerprints.
That's correct.
Okay. Which of the sinks is the north sink in that bathroom?
It would be the one centered in the photograph.
In photograph VV?
That's correct.
So it would be the left sink as you face the mirror?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's where this fingerprint I was taken?
That would be correct, yes.
Thank you. While you were on scene, were you present, or before we move on to that, while you were conducting your examination and the lift for latents, did you notice any marks or patterns emerging as you applied the black powder to the shower area or areas within the bathroom?
Yes, I did. You can see areas of swirling and swiping, which is commonly seen after an object has been wetted or wet. In this case, it could have been cleaned, but the powder will adhere to the moisture trace left behind. You can actually see the patterns of the swirling from where something has been wiped or cleaned.
And where did you make those observations specifically of cleaning or wiping?
I noticed them particularly in the shower.
Okay. Was it uniform over the entire surface of the shower, or was it limited to particular
It
areas?
was pretty much the entire surface was very clean.
Okay. Were you in the home when Investigator Mott attempted to employ the use of Luminol or Blue Star?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. Is that a search chemical to find and locate items of potential evidence, particularly blood?
Yes, it is. It is a blood reagent.
Okay. Investigator Mott has already described to us the difference between the flash associated with chemicals and the glow that you often get for blood or other.
Yes, sir.
You know,
Can be household
specimens.
chemicals, phosphates, things of that nature.
Were you there to observe the reaction that occurred within the bathroom?
Yes, sir, I was.
Now, in your time at the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, have you attempted to photograph the reaction associated with the Blue Star or Luminol?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay, and it's a pretty difficult process, is that correct?
It is a very difficult process. It requires some good timing skill.
It's a photograph taken in complete darkness?
Yes.
Okay. On this day, were either you or Investigator Mott able to photograph the reaction that occurred?
No, we did not get a good photograph of that, no.
Were you able to view areas that had been recently cleaned and showed white marks across the floor and some of the walls in the bathroom?
Yes, those did show up.
Okay. After your first effort within the home the week of October 23rd, how many other times did you re-enter the home in order to obtain evidentiary items?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
After your first effort on or about October 23rd within the home, how many other times did you later re-enter the home in an effort to collect evidentiary items?
I believe I went back, let me see here, on 11/14.
Yes, sir.
I went back and assisted with a search of the residence at that time.
And what was the purpose of the search on 11/14?
To verify we did not miss anything during the initial searches. And at that point, we collected a shovel and did a final walkthrough of the scene.
One moment, please. Thank you, Investigator Deweese. No further questions.
Thank you.
Any cross-examination?
Okay. Judge, could you mute the screen? Thank you.
Good morning, Investigator.
Good morning, sir.
Good to see you again.
See you.
Investigator, you collected all the water bottles that were in the house, in the dining area and on the table,
That's correct, yes, sir.
and you collected those to try to find prints on those?
Yes, sir.
And was your purpose to collect those to try to see if any DNA was on those?
We did scrub them for possible DNA evidence, yes.
And you scrubbed them with your swabs?
That's correct.
And then you packaged them, and then those apparently would have been sent to Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
That would be correct, yes.
All right. Now, with regards to your fingerprint testing in the house,
Yes, sir.
you said you try to get fingerprints from all over the house.
Yes, sir.
And I'm referring to your report where you talked about the front door, light switches, sliding glass doors,
Yes, sir.
sinks, counters, refrigerators. It seems like all those items have a smooth surface.
Yes, sir. There were some surfaces that were not truly smooth, though.
So if it's a smooth surface, it's more likely to, a print would be more likely to be left behind on a smooth surface.
Certainly more likely to be us be able to lift it, to see it and lift it on a smooth surface.
All right. Now, with regard to the Blue Star application, how many times have you applied Blue Star in your career with the Sheriff's Office?
The actual product Blue Star, probably 3 times. I've applied Luminol probably maybe 20 or 30 times over my career.
And how many times have you taken photos of the reaction of the Blue Star and the Luminol?
Maybe on 3 occasions over my career. Usually when we specifically want to concentrate on a photograph is when we have blood evidence that shows, say, evidence of dragging or something to do with an assault.
Okay. All right, so in this case, you tried to take the photograph,
Yes, sir.
and it just didn't work out.
Yes, sir.
And that's an interior bathroom, correct?
That's correct.
So there's no window to the outside?
I don't recall if there's a window in the bathroom or not. Very low light, though.
But it would be pretty easy to make that bathroom dark.
Yes, sir.
So you attempted to make it dark, you attempted to take a photograph, but it just didn't come out.
Just didn't come out.
Is that due to what? Was that failure by you, Investigator Mott?
Honestly, both of us. And again, we're dealing with a chemical flash here, which is a much quicker reaction than actual blood would be, which gives you a little more time to do the exposure.
So this chemical reaction that you were looking at, that could result from other items besides blood.
It would probably be other item other than blood, probably be a cleaning reagent, or I'm sorry, cleaning chemical.
And luminol also reacts with other items that aren't cleaners.
Certainly, yes.
Now, with regard to the shower area where you put your fingerprint powder,
Yes, sir.
and you testified it showed areas of being wiped throughout the shower.
Yes.
Now, we don't know when that wiping occurred,
No, we don't.
and we don't know if it's more than one wiping instance.
That would be correct.
And we don't know if it's wiping to clean something with a cleaner or wiping with a bath towel or while you're in the shower.
I would just say it's something that was damp or wet.
Something's damp or wet and something wiped through it.
That's correct.
So that could be any number of things in a house with 4 individuals.
It's possible, yes.
What is the Kastle-Meyer blood reagent?
Kastle-Meyer blood reagent is a chemical called phenolphthalein, which is it is a blood reagent. It is probably the chief test we use for the presumptive positive check for blood. It's more specific to blood than luminol. I believe phenolphthalein or Kastle-Meyer will detect probably 1 part in 200,000 of blood.
Okay. Did you use that reagent in the bathroom at all?
Investigator Mott did. When we were spraying with the Blue Star and we get a reaction, we would follow up and test with the Kastle-Meyer or phenolphthalein to determine if it was blood, which I think in all cases with the Blue Star, it turned out not to be blood that we were seeing.
Okay. Now, you actually used the Kastle-Meyer reagent in the master bedroom. You recall that?
Myself or Investigator Mott have. We probably used it in conjunction, yes.
Okay. On a suspected stain on a green-colored blanket.
Yes.
You
Yes,
recall
I
that?
do recall that, yes.
And the stain turned out not to be blood.
That's correct.
And that's based on the Kastle-Meyer reagent.
That is correct.
Now, that Kastle-Meyer, that's a presumptive test that you use on scene of an investigation?
On scene and in our laboratory, yes.
And then when items are taken to a crime lab, such as the one to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, it's usually confirmed?
Usually, yes. I've seen very few, in fact, maybe 3 cases in my career that turned out to not be blood where phenolphthalein said it was blood.
Very few.
And generally in that case, it turned out to be animal blood. It was still blood, but not human blood.
No further questions. Thank you.
Yes.
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you. May the witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Enjoy retirement. State's next witness.
State calls Crystal Bustamante.
You solemnly swear affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Could you tell us your name, please?
Crystal Bustamante.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm currently employed with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office as a deputy sheriff.
Okay, make sure you stay on the microphone even as you turn your head,
Yeah, you have to
okay?
get real close.
Yeah, really close.
Okay. You're employed as a deputy within the Volusia County Sheriff's Office?
Yes,
Okay. How long have you been a sworn law enforcement officer for Volusia County Sheriff's Office?
since 2014.
Okay. What was your position prior to 2014?
Prior to 2014, I was a fingerprint technician through the Volusia County Sheriff's Office under Technical Service Unit.
Okay. And as a fingerprint technician within the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, what is within your job duty and description?
Some of my duties included the identification of any John Does or Jane Does that were being booked into Volusia County Jail. I also did fingerprint analysis of any latent prints that were being submitted. We did fingerprinting of subjects that were coming into the office, and any other identifications that needed to be done to other agencies, both within Volusia County and outside Volusia County.
Were you the primary fingerprint examiner as it related to the investigation of Louis Toledo and the involvement of his wife's murder and the murder of the two children?
Yes.
During the course of your investigation, how many, or the course of your analysis, how many fingerprints or latent lifts were submitted for your review?
A total of 88 latent prints were submitted.
And we're going to need to make a distinction here between latent prints of value and not of value. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. Latent prints of value are latent prints or prints that were determined that there's enough friction-rich detail, enough characteristics of that for an individualization to be made or an identification to be made. A fingerprint or a latent print that's been determined to be of no value, there is not sufficient characteristics or rich detail available for a identification to be made with that print.
Friction-rich detail and characteristics.
Yes.
What are you talking about?
Friction-rich detail, if you look at your hands right now, the raised portions of your hands, whether it be your fingers or your palms, that's your friction-rich detail. So it's unique to the individual. It's used to graspings and also for identification purposes. Characteristics is the detail, the minutia that we looked at when we make an identification. And those can be consistent of rich endings, bifurcations, dots that are available or that your friction-rich detail contains within.
Are those commonly called either loops or whorls?
Those would be your patterns. There's 3 types of patterns that we usually, fingerprints will have, and those are your arches, your loops, and your whorls.
Okay. And those are the individual characteristics of each fingerprint and pattern
Correct.
of your finger?
Yes.
During the course of this investigation, were the fingerprint standards of Louis Toledo, Tyshawn Jackson, and Jasenia Perez submitted for comparison purposes?
I was given the information, the names of the subjects for us to check to see if we had if we had known samplers for each of those individuals available, of which we did.
Okay. And another individual named Chris Lasanta had fingerprint standards submitted as well?
Correct.
And by standards, what I mean is that their fingerprints were inked and rolled, and that they were sent to you either digitally or in their inked and rolled state for you to compare things lifted and brought to you by law enforcement.
Yes.
You told us that there were 88 latents that were lifted. How many prints of value were there?
I would have to look at the case file. There were a total of 88 latent prints that were submitted, but they were submitted at different stages.
Okay.
A total of 10 different submissions were done through the course of the investigation.
Does 17 sound about right? Does that number stand out to you?
It does.
Okay. Do you want to look at your report
Yes,
to confirm
please.
it? Sure.
Excuse me, are you counting the ones that are of value elimination as well, or just of value?
Well, you tell me, you're the analyst.
Because there's a distinction between a value, which means an identification can be made, and the ones that we consider of elimination purposes only are those that are, there's sufficient rich detail where a exclusion may be made, but not an identification.
When we're talking about of value, let me break that down a little further.
Okay.
In order to be of value, we're not talking about smudged prints or obliterated or destroyed prints, right? We're talking about a full and complete fingerprint that can be analyzed.
It would be a partial fingerprint that there's sufficient rich detail or characteristics where an identification can be made.
Okay. And when you talk about elimination, tell us how an elimination is conducted.
An elimination could be that it's a partial fingerprint. There's enough characteristics that are available where a pattern may be visible. If the pattern is visible, an elimination can be made of a subject. For example, if the suspect has loops as his fingerprints and the elimination print or the latent elimination print is a world, we can eliminate that person from being that donor because his pattern is not consistent with the pattern that's visible with the elimination. However, if the subject has a world and it's consistent with the world that is on the elimination print, we can't exclude him, but we can't identify that print to him because there's just not sufficient actual rich detail available for an individualization to be made.
In this case, how many prints of value did you have, and then how many prints did you have that had value but were elimination?
Apologize, there's a lot of cases.
That's all right. There were a lot of fingerprints.
There were a total of 12 that were of value and 5 that were considered elimination only.
Okay, so a total of 17 that were value or elimination.
Correct.
Okay. Now, 88 latent cards were submitted for your analysis, and of the 88, only 17 had relevance in this case.
Correct.
Okay, meaning that the others were either obliterated or destroyed or did not contain sufficient ridge detail for you to conduct an analysis as it relates to the 4 named individuals: Luis Toledo, Yesenia Suarez, Tyshawn Jackson, and Chris Lasanta. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, of the 17 prints of value or elimination, how many of those fingerprints were related back to Tyshawn Jackson?
0.
Of the 17 fingerprints of value or elimination, how many were related back to Chris Lasanta?
0.
Of the 17 fingerprints of either value or elimination, how many were related back to Yesenia Suarez?
0.
Ma'am, I'm going to approach with what's been marked State's Exhibit I, 5 eyes. The latent card in there has been identified by Investigator DeWeese. Do you recognize his handwriting on it?
Yes.
Was it an item of evidence submitted to you in this case?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And the associated paperwork what is that?
The associated paperwork contains a known sampler of a palm print, a enlargement of the side-by-side comparison of the latent print to the known print, and then the plastic evidence containing the latent print that was submitted to me.
As far as the palm print, does it also contain fingerprints on the same page?
It's a full rolled palm print with the flats of the both right hand and left hand.
Okay. And is that the rolled palm print and fingerprints of Luis Toledo that were collected after his arrest in this case?
Correct.
Did you use those rolled fingerprints and palm prints to conduct an analysis as it relates to State's Exhibit 5 eyes, the fingerprint lifted by Investigator DeWeese on the northern sink of the master bathroom?
Yes.
And are those items and the same clearance, do they fairly and substantially show your work during this time, and are they in the same condition as when you last saw them?
Yes, they are.
Judge, if there are no objections at this point, State will remove 5 eyes of the evidence that states next. No objection.
Without objection, it will be admitted.
State 69.
Ma'am, what can you tell us about your analysis as it relates to the fingerprint removed from the northern sink in the master bathroom at 317 Covent Gardens?
After an analysis was done, a comparison in my evaluation, I determined the fingerprint or the latent print was identified to Mr. Luis Toledo.
In fact, that's the only fingerprint of the 17 that was identified to Luis Toledo as coming from the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
And again, there were no fingerprints of Tyshawn Jackson, Chris Lasanta, or Yesenia Suarez that were removed from the house and submitted for your analysis.
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions for this witness.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Morning.
Good morning.
Investigator DeWeese submitted 14 latent prints to you, correct?
Yes.
And one of the 14, as you just identified, was to Mr. Toledo from his own master bathroom.
Correct.
What about the other 13 that he gave you?
The other 13 were not identified.
And not that were not of value or not elimination?
Correct. There was a total of 3 that were determined to be elimination only. 1 that was identified, 8 that were of no value, and 2 that were of value but were not identified.
Let's talk about these 71 other latents that were not of value and not elimination. These were latents that were lifted by crime scene investigators and submitted to you, correct?
Yes,
And these were latents that you just did not have enough information to make any type of identification.
yes,
That could have been for a number of reasons.
correct.
Judge, may we approach?
Yeah. We'll be in recess for about, say, 10 minutes. 10.
Jury's out of presence of court.
Okay, thank you. You can take Mr. Toledo in, okay. Now, let's go back on the record. Did you get a chance to take the proffer outside the courtroom?
Yes, Judge, I interviewed the witness, and I do have additional questions.
Okay, and there was some sort of a motion or something?
The state objects to the relevance of the information, and would appreciate the defense proffering it for an evidentiary ruling prior to admitting it in front of the jury.
Okay, what exactly is it that you wish to inquire from the
Judge,
witness?
may I ask the witness?
Sure, go ahead.
You can just tell the court, you don't need to go through it if you want.
Judge, what happened when one of the latent lifts that was submitted in this case by Deputy Medford came back as a hit to a woman named Brittany Lynn Hoffman, a white female, and this was from the rear driver's side door interior window of the Honda that was recovered in Seminole County.
Yes, sir?
That's one of the 88 lifts that was, came back to someone.
Okay.
We feel it's relevant, we want to get it on the record, and that's all we know. Just that there was a hit to another individual besides Mr. Toledo, Ms. LaSanta, Ms. Perez, and Mr. Jackson.
Brittany Lynn Hoffman?
It was inside of the Honda.
Okay, all right, and what's the objection?
My objection is to relevance, Judge. There's no connection to Brittany Hoffman. No one knows who that is. Ms. Hoffman's print was found somewhere inside Jacinia Perez's vehicle, but nobody in this case is ever going to talk about who Ms. Hoffman might be. And the fact that it came up as an APHIS hit, excuse me, Ms. Hoffman is in the system as a convicted felon, makes it somewhat prejudicial, particularly given the fact that she'll never be linked back in any way to this case or this investigation, and her name will never be mentioned again anywhere in the trial except for today, as far as I know.
Judge, if I may, we feel that it is relevant, and the jury can decide what weight to give it. It's a hit. I mean, we've been talking about fingerprints now for yesterday and today, about what lists were taken and what was recovered and who they didn't come back to. Well, this is something that did come back to someone on a piece of evidence relevant in this case.
All right, I'll let it in. You ready for the jury?
Yes, Judge.
Bring him in.
Your Honor, the jury's in the presence of the court, seated in the jury box, sir.
Very well, you may be seated. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Bustamante, I want to direct your attention to submission E.
Yes,
Okay, and this was a series of latents lifted by, or given to you by Deputy Medford on or about October 29, 2013, correct?
that is correct.
And one of these lists came back as a print of value, is that correct?
That is correct.
and it came back to a female named Brittany Lynn Hoffman, is that correct?
That is correct.
And this print of value to Brittany Lynn Hoffman was discovered inside the Honda, is that correct?
It was a latent lift that was recovered from the Honda, yes.
And where inside the Honda was it recovered?
Let me look at the latent print.
Well, let me rephrase it.
Actually, I have that on my notes. It was from the rear driver's side door interior window.
And was it a thumb or an index finger or a palm?
May I review my file?
Yes.
It was determined to be the left middle finger.
Judge, may I have a moment?
Yes, sir.
Judge, no further questions.
All right, state your, any redirect.
No questions, Judge.
May the witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, you are excused. State, call your next witness.
State calls Leroy Parker.
solemnly swear affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Could you tell us your name, please?
N. Leroy Parker.
Okay. And Mr. Parker, what do you do for a living currently?
I'm retired, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
From which field?
From the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Orlando Regional Operations Center.
Okay.
I was in the crime scene section in Orlando.
You have a bit of an accent, so I'm going to ask you to speak slowly for us, okay? I don't want your words to run together.
Okay, thank you.
What was your position within the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and how long were you employed within that department?
When I retired in 2013, July 31st, I was a crime lab analyst supervisor. I supervised the latent print, crime scene, and photography sections.
And how long were you employed within the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
I was employed for 33 years, 2 months, and 2 weeks.
Aside from the supervisory position, which other positions did you hold within that department?
I started as a crime scene analyst, then I became a senior crime scene analyst, and then I became a supervisor.
Okay. Tell us what a crime scene analyst does within the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and then work your way through the duties of each of the positions that you've held over the years.
Okay. Crime scene analysts for FDLE assist the local agencies with any major crime scenes they may have. So they just make a call, or get a request, and we'll go to the crime scene, we'll process the entire crime scene, collect the evidence, take it back to the lab, have it all analyzed, and at the end of everything, we'll issue a report as to what we have done at the crime scene.
Okay.
In addition to that, I did bloodstain pattern analysis, shooting reconstruction, and for about 17 years, I did gunshot residue analysis.
Okay. As it relates to blood pattern analysis, tell us what your education, training, and experience is to hold such a position as a crime scene analyst and an expert in both blood pattern analysis within the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Okay, when I started with FDLE, we went through 400 hours of crime scene procedure as a part of phase 1. Phase 2 consisted of taking areas in crime scene and expanding those areas
and doing research on those areas. My area was bloodstain pattern analysis, so I got a working group, and we invested about 1,000 hours on bloodstain pattern analysis, and then at the end of that, we issue a report on what we did.
When did you first begin in the field of bloodstain pattern analysis? What year?
I started with FDL in 1980, and so I started with bloodstains shortly after I started in May, so around September after the end of phase 1 training.
Okay. And during the course of your career, did you continue to work in the field of bloodstain pattern analysis?
I continued to work until I retired, and after retired, I did some teaching and some consulting.
Okay. And as it relates to teaching, what disciplines have you taught in? Is it for bloodstain pattern analysis or a larger field of crime scene investigation?
Well, I used to do one class at the Toledo State College. I think the last one I did was in 2015. And I've done bloodstain classes and shooting reconstruction at different locations in the United States.
Okay.
I currently teach still for the Attorney General's Office of Ohio. So I go up there twice a year and I do 2 40-hour workshops on bloodstain pattern analysis. And then
I'm sorry, did you say 2 40-hour?
2 40-hour workshops on bloodstain pattern analysis and 1 40-hour workshop on shooting reconstruction.
Okay. And during your time with teaching with Daytona State College, was this a semester class? Was it a day class? Give us some idea of the length.
They were all 40-hour workshops on bloodstain pattern analysis, shooting reconstruction, and crime scene.
Have you ever been published in the field of bloodstain pattern analysis?
Yes, sir. I've written a workbook on how to reconstruct bloodstain pattern, and I've also done one on shooting reconstruction.
Aside from the individuals reading your book, how many individuals have you personally taught in the field of bloodstain pattern analysis?
I would say a couple hundred, because I did the class twice a year when I was working for the University of North Florida, IPTM, and so we had about maybe 20 people twice a year. So I've done quite a bit of people, 100 plus people, because I taught for about 20 plus years with IPTM.
What's IPTM?
University of North Florida Institute of Police Management and Technology. Okay. So it's an area where they do classes pertaining to forensics, and so forensics, pertaining to forensics. And so I was asked to teach a class on bloodstain. That is a 40-hour workshop, and another one on shooting reconstruction.
Okay. Was Josh Mott one of your students during your career?
That's correct, sir. As I think, if I can recall, he'd been into 2 40-hour workshops on bloodstain pattern analysis.
How many times have you been called upon during your career to give an expert testimony in a courtroom in the state of Florida or in the United States?
Probably pretty close to 1,000, because I did gunshot residue, and I traveled just about every week. If I got a positive, then I got a request from the state attorney. If I got a negative, then I got a request from the defense attorney. So that was very busy. I traveled just about every week, because the lab did we did about 1,000 gunshot residue cases per year. I did shooting reconstruction, and I did different counties, so I traveled for that also. I did bloodstain pattern analysis that covered the whole state. I traveled for that. So I probably exceeded 1,000, including all the areas of forensics that I worked in.
Within the discrete field of bloodstain pattern analysis, how many times have you testified as an expert in the state of Florida or the United States?
I would say in excess of 200 times.
Mr. Parker, how were you first contacted to become involved in this case?
I remember talking to Josh. He was in the bloodstain pattern analysis class in 2015, and I talked to him, and then he asked me if I would be interested in assisting in the case, and I said, okay, I did. And then I think I talked to you shortly after that. And then Josh brought me some information that is investigative reports and some photographs on the scene, so I looked at that. And then I actually went to the crime scene, I think it was in the 11th of December in 2015.
And when you talk about the scene and the crime scene, you're talking about the residence of 317 Covent Gardens in Deltona, Florida.
That's correct, sir.
When you went into the home, did you examine the bathroom and conduct your own independent examination?
That's correct. I looked at the documentation that Josh had done because the tapes were still attached to the wall. So I looked at the tape, looked at the blood stain, and then I took some measurements of my own just so I could, correlate everything with in relationship to where the tapes were. Excuse me.
In your review of materials before you went to the home, did you review the photographs that Investigator Mott took in association with his own investigation?
I did, and I asked him to make some enlargements of some of the photographs, and he did.
And when you went to the home in 2015, nearly 2 years later, were the sticker tapes and the blood stains substantially the same as they were in 2013 when he took his photographs?
That's correct, sir.
Had anyone tampered with the scene in any way you could tell?
It doesn't appear that the scene was altered or tampered with.
During the course of your independent investigation into the home or examination, tell us some of the things that you did.
Well, I looked at the stains, and when one look at stains, one look at, first of all, the shape of the stain. They're either oval or they're circular. And the oval or the circular shape give you an indication of how they impacted that surface. If it's circular, then it means it impacted that surface at a 90-degree angle. Because what one does, one measures the width and the length. In a circular stain...
I'm sorry, the width and the length of
width
what?
Of the stain.
Okay.
Yeah. In a circular stain, the width or the length is the same because it's circular. So if you divide the width by the length, you get 1, and you do the arc sign, that would be 90 degrees. Now, if the stain, am I good? If the stain is oval, then one can measure the width, one can measure the length. The width, by definition, is always shorter than the length. So if one divides the width by the length, one gets a decimal because the width is shorter than the length. One can either go to the tables, the sign tables, or do the second function sign, and that will give you an angle. That means one determined the angle at which that blood stain impacted the surface.
And when you talk about sign and second function sign, you're actually talking about a mathematical word. That's not S-I-G-N, that's S-I-N. It's a mathematical term.
S-I-N-E, abbreviated as S-I-N.
Yes.
That's correct.
And so this is a mathematical calculation that you do for each of the stains that you find in any location.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And did you do that mathematical determination or calculation with respect to each of the blood stains that were found within the home of 317 Covent Gardens?
No, I didn't do it for each one of the stains. I looked at some of the stains, and having done it for 30-plus years, I can look at the stain and get an approximate angle at which that stain impacted that surface.
Okay. If you're going to do a reconstruction, is it appropriate to go through each of the mathematical calculations to find a place of origin?
Right. If one's going to do a reconstruction, we normally select a minimum of about 5 stains. The stains are either oval in shape or circular. If they're circular, it means that the impact was a 90 degree. The oval stains, the tail points in the direction they travel. So one can draw a line in the opposite direction to the direction of travel and do that for about 5 or 6 stains. And where those lines converge, that is known as a point or area of convergence. So one can physically draw lines on a blood-stained surface in the opposite direction to the direction where the stains are traveling, and where those stains intersect or cross each other, that is, in blood stain, determines the point or area of convergence. That actually gives you a height of the impact site, because the height of the impact site is the same as the height of the point of convergence. The second thing that one would normally do, the stains that were selected to draw the lines through, one would have to physically measure those stains, the width and the length, and get an impact angle for each one of those stains. So we can use that impact angle
with the distance between the center of each one of the stain and the center of the point of convergence, and do a trig ratio. This now becomes a tangent, trigonometrical ratio, a trig ratio, abbreviated trig. This is known as a tangent because we have the opposite side and the adjacent side. So one has the distance between the point of convergence and the point of the center of the stain. So we physically measure that distance. We have the impact angle, which is the angle at which it impacted the surface. So we need to find now the distance from the point of origin. The point of origin is where the blood actually started. That's target. So one can actually do a reconstruction and determine where those stains were coming from, having picked the stain, having determined the angle at which that stain impacted the surface, and having determined the distance from the point of the convergence, the point of convergence to the center of that stain. And there are three ways one can do it. One can do a scale drawing, that is a drawing to scale. One can actually physically put up strings. You can attach a string to the center of the spot, use your protractor in the direction which the stain was traveling, and for a series of 5, one will get the area where those strings cross each other, or one can do a mathematical calculation, which a lot of times is easier. So one can use the distance between the point of convergence, the point center of the stain, and the impact angle, and that's a trig ratio, and which is the adjacent side times the tangent of the angle, and that will give us the opposite side, which is distance from the point of convergence. Am I going too fast? From the point of convergence to the point of origin.
Let me interrupt you there.
So,
You've explained to us
do you
how...
have a board or something I can?
I'll get to it in just a few minutes. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the theory of it before we got into the actual evidence itself. And I also wanted to make this point.
Yeah.
You told us that there are certain cases in which you can do a reconstruction, and that if you do that reconstruction, it requires the mathematical formula. Or
Scale drawings.
Right, or one of these other things.
Strings, yeah.
Yes. In this particular case, you were not able to conduct, or able to do a reconstruction, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, and so for each of these stains that we're going to see, you didn't have to do the mathematical formula for each and every one of them because you weren't able to find a common point of origin for the stains, is that
About 5 or
accurate?
6 stains, yeah.
Okay, tell us why and how that's done.
Okay, I wasn't able to find the point or area of convergence because the stains were actually, some of them were nondescript, and some of them didn't have the same point of convergence. That is, the tears weren't all in the same direction, or haven't come from the same direction.
Okay. And so, as we go through your testimony today, we're going to be talking about each of the individual stains rather than the reconstruction of the stains. Is that accurate?
That's correct, sir, yeah.
Okay. Judge, this might be a good place to break if it's all right with the court.
All right, why don't we take our lunch break at this time? We'll be in recess until 1:30, okay? Enjoy the crock pot. Today. All right. I'll bring cookies for you guys next week. Okay, thank you. You may remove.
Can you do a similar instruction you did yesterday during lunch break for the witness?
Oh, well, he's talking to them right now. Mr. Parker, just make sure you don't converse about the case with the prosecution while we're doing the break, okay?
Yes, sir, I've been through that a couple hundred times.
Yes, I'm sure you have. All right. Okay, you can take Mr. Toledo this time.
Did you say 1:30, Judge?
1:30.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense will make an objection to this testimony based on a pretrial motion and hearing we have in this matter.
Okay, the same ruling will stand as to the matters we have previously heard regarding this. Is it an exhibit? Is that what it is?
No, his testimony.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Judge, also, we're objecting to the exhibit. This is States 52. I've already objected to this exhibit multiple times.
Yeah, and I've conditionally admitted the exhibit so long as the state can tie it up later on.
Yes, sir.
You may proceed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parker, before we left for the lunch break, I think you were telling us that you were not able to do a reconstruction in this particular case. Why is that, sir?
Well, the traditional reconstruction, I was able to do that where we get the 5 or 6 spots.
Make sure you talk slow. Remember your accent. I'm sorry.
Okay. Traditional reconstruction, where we get 5 or 6 spots, determine the point or area of convergence, and ultimately determine the point or area of origin. But I can look at individual stains, and from those 2 individual stains, I could determine the angle at which they impacted the surface and the path they took in order to get to that area. And then for them to be traveling horizontally to hit a vertical target, then it means they have initial velocity given by a forcible impact or cast off. So it means that they had initial velocity, they're traveling horizontally and vertical. So I'm totally convinced that there was some forcible bloodshed in that area.
Okay.
Judge, I'm objecting to that last statement. That's a conclusory statement. We haven't gotten there yet, and I don't know if we're going to get there.
Okay, overrule, I think the term is a scientific term, the way he used it, the words with force, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you were?
She's referring to bloodshed, the bloodshed incident.
Oh,
No evidence of that.
okay, overrule.
Okay, Mr. Parker, I think your explanation will probably go a lot better if you take a look at some of the photographs with us. The unfortunate problem is these laser pointers don't work on the screens. And so what I'm going to ask, with the court's permission, is if you'll step down and take a look at the photographic boards
Right.
so that you can tell us the significance of the blood within the home.
Counsel, you feel free to move about to take a look, okay?
So you want me to come down here?
Yes, sir.
Is he going to do it right there in front of the jury?
Yes, sir. Right here, if that's all right.
I'm going to come down too.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Parker, I'm going to place up State's Exhibit 52 so that we can kind of have some orientation as to where each of these stains are. And as I go through the exhibits with you, I'd like to talk about what it is that you see as to each photograph that we're putting up. I'd like to start on the boards of 4 photographs in the upper left corner and work in a clockwise fashion. And the boards of 3 will just come down the page from the top. But if you'll keep your voice up, be mindful that some of the jurors are seated next to and behind you as you explain what you see. In the first photograph here, in State's Exhibit 53, in the upper left corner, you described that you saw the room in this manner with the tag still attached. Explain to us what it is that we see here and the forensic significance of each of the photographs as you work in a clockwise fashion, please.
Okay. These tapes represent or place near individual spots of blood. For the spots of blood to have gotten there, it must have left the human body. A force must have been applied to it in order for it to get there, because the blood circulates in the human body in a closed system. So if the blood is here, a force of impact had to be applied to it. So in my opinion, it's a force of bloodshed. Because force applied to the blood and it moves, it has kinetic energy and it moves to a target. So, I mean, in a real world, my blood's enclosed in my system. The only way I can get blood outside, if I have a puncture or cut or something like that, and the blood's exposed. And then once the blood is hit, then it gets kinetic energy, it has energy to move forward, and it hits a target, it closes the target.
Let me ask you a question. Let's do this so that everybody can see. Let's change the board orientation so that your back to anybody. I ask you to stand on this side with your back to the audience and allow the jury to hear your testimony as you explain.
Judge, I can't sit. I got to relocate. I'm going this way, so.
I can do this. Does this help?
Yeah.
Okay. If I can get you to come to this side, Mr. Parker.
Okay.
As blood receives kinetic energy, there are different kinds of blood spots in the way that blood deposits on a particular surface. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Could you explain to us what those different spots are called based upon your field and your knowledge of those spots, how they'll be important in your testimony here today?
In blood stain, we have basically three categories. We have low velocity blood stain, which means blood falling, no initial velocity, and it falls because of the force of gravity. So these exclude that because these are on a vertical target, so the blood was falling vertically on a vertical target and create an angle like that. Those blood stains usually travel at less than 25 feet per second, and they usually refer to as drop blood because they fall on the floor. They gain with energy, so they create some small satellite spatter that bounce up on any target close to them. The second category of blood stains are medium velocity blood stains, which have an initial velocity of 25 to 100 feet per second. That's been established before it's started with blood stains. It doesn't really make a lot of sense because we don't know the initial velocity with which the blood leaves the target. So, a better way to identify it is by the size of the stains. Those stains are predominantly 3 millimeter or 1/8 of an inch and larger in diameter. These stains here fall in the category of medium velocity. The next group of stains are high velocity, usually resulting from a gunshot wound. Those stains are said to travel in excess of 100 feet per second. That is the initial velocity at which to leave the target is greater than 100 feet per second. So let's explain the three categories.
Yes, sir. And here we're not talking about high velocity.
No, we're not talking about high velocity. We're talking about medium velocity, which again is determined by the size of the stain, 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeter and larger for the predominance of the stain. Okay. Even though it's given from 25 to 100 feet per second, nobody ever knows, unless you're in a controlled environment, the speed at which it leaves.
So we're talking about medium velocity blood spatter and or stains. Help us with some of the terminology as it relates to spatter, impact, cast off. Kind of give us a better sense of what we're going to
Spattered blood and impact blood are the same thing. Spattered blood and impact blood are blood which is sitting on the surface, has potential energy, a force is applied to it, the force on the object is converted into breaking the blood into small droplets. These blood now have kinetic energy so they can move to a target. So the only way we can have blood on a vertical target, it means a force has to be applied to it, give it the energy to move horizontally and hit a vertical target. So these are all on a vertical target, or most of the blood stains are on a vertical target, which means they have to travel horizontally, given the fact that some of them will lose the horizontal velocity depending on the initial velocity, and they create a greater angle. But they initially were traveling horizontally in order to get to a vertical target. I mean, there's not a way they could get there. Okay, so we're looking at these stains here. I don't know if you can see from there, but these are very small stains, and they're oval in shape, which means they're sort of elongated. They have a tail, and the tail is pointing downward. These here have a very oval, so the angle is smaller. The more oval the stain, the smaller it is. So when you have a very small width and a large length, when you divide the width by the length, you get a small angle. So these have a small angle. So what happened to these, they were traveling and they lose the horizontal velocity and they were able to hit this vertical target before they lose all the horizontal velocity. So that's why they're down here. So these stains here were traveling horizontally, hit a vertical target before they lose all the horizontal velocity. So these stains here, why we couldn't do the reconstruction, because when we look at the direction of the stains are traveling, if we draw lines in the opposite direction, they wouldn't converge at one area. So these are more likely coming from a cast-off stain, because the cast-off stain occurs when the blood is clinging to a bloody object, and it is discharged as well as a change speed and or direction. So if I'm here, there's a source of blood here, I impact the blood with the object. As I swing backward here, I stop here. This is a change in speed because it goes from what I was traveling to 0. It's a change in direction because I'm going in the opposite direction. So that's how cast of blood is created, where it changes the speed and or direction. So in order for it to be traveling, it has a horizontal velocity. That horizontal velocity is given to it based on the swing of the object, how fast the object is swung. And the speed very dependent on how profusely the person is hitting the. So all these stains here, they either fall in 2 categories. They are the cast-off stains, or the impact or spattered blood. Spattered and impact stains that I see. We just use the term the impact spatter because they actually receive an impact and the trauma. Spattered blood, the definition is blood with a single object, receive a forcible impact and is deposited on the target. A target being any object that receives blood. So if I use the word interchangeably, the words interchangeably, spattered blood or impact spatter, I'm referring to the same thing. Because they initially got a force, breaking up into smaller drops, giving it kinetic energy to move horizontally. Other than that, they were steady forever and ever, having the potential energy to do something, but they wouldn't do anything unless a force is applied. Okay, so these here are all blood that are traveling horizontally. Some of them have a smaller angle than the others. The smaller angle being that they lost most of the horizontal velocity and they just managed to hit the target before they lose all the horizontal velocity. So these here, down here, what we try to do in blood stains is we collect the stains or look at the stains that have a nice distinct tail, and we pick about 5 or 6. And we physically draw lines through the stain in the direction of the tail, and we come back like this. And where these lines cross, that is known as the point or area of convergence. So the point or area of convergence is that physical location on the blood stain surface where lines drawn in the opposite direction to the direction the stains are traveling. When these converge, that will be the point or area of convergence.
With these particular stains, were you able to determine a point or area of convergence?
Now with these stains here, I looked at them and they didn't have a common point or area of convergence. But I know they were traveling downward, and I know they had the, as a result of something that given them initial velocity for them to travel horizontally. So I could look at these stains individually. I could draw a line through the stain. I could put a smart tool. The smart tool means a smart laser track. It's an instrument, it's actually a level, but it's a digital level. So I can place that on the surface here. I can actually give an angle to the horizontal plane. An angle to the horizontal plane, when this is the horizontal plane, and it's traveling, it's calculating that angle to the horizontal plane. I can also look at that stain. I can measure the width and the length of that stain, and that will give me the impact angle, and divide the width by the length, and that will tell me the angle at which it's impacting the surface. So each individual stain, one can work with it and determine the path that it took. But what I can't determine exactly where it came from.
You say you cannot?
Cannot determine exactly where it came from because I have to have a series of them which cross at one area. But you can say, okay, this was traveling horizontal, under horizontal plane and impacted the surface in such an angle. So that can be done for every stain, but we need a group of stains that have a common point or area for vision. In other words, I can draw lines back to these stains and they would all cross in an area here. This is the point or area of convergence on the surface where the blood is. So that's two-dimensional. Now, the third, three-dimensional comes in where we want to take this a little further and determine exactly where the impact occurred, where the impact sizes are where the spattered blood started, where the force applied to the blood that's sitting there with potential energy and traveling. That could not be determined because I could not determine, first of all, the point or area of convergence.
Okay. Though you cannot determine a point or area of convergence because you don't have enough blood stains, are you able to independently examine each of the stains and tell us some things about the stains and the characteristics to learn a little bit more of what happened in this house?
Right. So I can look at the stains, and the stains will have a smaller impact angle.
Hold on, the answer to that was a yes or no.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
So
We're going to go on to some more pictures, and I'm going to do
I
this.
should teach in these classes I'm going to.
I know. I'm going to try and put the photographs up here and keep up with you so
Okay.
everybody can see, because I think the jurors on the far end are going to have a hard time.
Oh,
So let's-
move over here.
No. I'm going to put them up on the televisions as we speak.
Oh, okay.
But I'd like for you to demonstrate down here because you can't use the laser pointer up there.
Okay, now we click.
You say you're going to put them up?
Yes, sir. Well, I'm going to use the boards, but I'm going to try and put them up there as well.
Are you ready for it?
Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, if you would go on to master closet number 1, please. I think it's the next slide. Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked State's Exhibit 54, which is an array of 4 photographs. And I want to start with master closet number 1 in the upper left-hand corner. You told us a moment ago that you could tell us some things about each individual spot of blood, and so I'd like for you to talk with us about this particular spot of blood, either on the television or on the boards. If you need to point to things, you can only use the pointer on the board.
Okay, there you can see that. This is an oval stain. It has a very small width and a long length. So when they divide the width by the length, you give us a small angle. So this here would be an impact angle of about 10 degrees. That is, to the surface, it impact an angle of 10 degrees. So the smaller the impact angle, the more elongated the stain. This here, I think, is a result of a cast-off stain that lost its horizontal velocity, but had enough horizontal velocity to hit the target before it loses all of the horizontal velocity. Otherwise, it would have been a stain on the floor. So if you're traveling horizontally, and the aircraft is traveling horizontally, the engine keep moving. They make the engine stop and it's going downward. So these stains have enough energy to either make it to the target or fall short.
As it relates to master closet number 2, the next photograph on our board, tell us what you can about this spot of blood.
This here, you see, is it has a little more width. That is, this is wider here. So this here is a stain that impacted about a 20-degree angle. It means that the vertical target, the stain hit, and once you get that angle here, it's a 20-degree angle. So I can look at the stains and I can tell the impact angle, I can measure it within the lens and determine that. But I also tell the direction which it's traveling. So if I draw a line through here and just place the smart level on the surface here, I could tell you the exact downward angle and downward angle to the horizontal plane. So having 2 angles, I can determine the actual path of that stain. I just can't put it off as exactly where it started, but it traveled that path. And that cannot be done because we don't have enough stains going in, coming from the same point of origin and point of convergence to establish that.
And with respect to master closet number 2, can you tell us whether it's a cast-off stain or an impact stain?
I think it's also a cast-off stain because it's low, much lower down there.
Let's take a look at master closet.
Could we just put the 3 stains up together?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if you look at the 3 stains up together, if you draw a line to the outside one, number 1, and number 2, if you extend that line, they would eventually cross. But if you look at number 3 is going in separate directions, so the line next to that would never cross. So in other words, those 3 could not come back to a common point or area of origin. Did I get that clear?
And as we address master closet number 3 itself, what can you tell us about just master closet number 3?
This here, and again, we cannot know for sure, but most likely it's a cast-off stain because of the not having enough velocity and down and being that low to the floor. But what I can know for sure that it has to have horizontal velocity and an angle to the horizontal plane to be impacted in this location here on the wall.
I'd like you to take a look at master closet number 4, which is also on the same exhibit.
Yeah.
What can you, it's a slightly different shape than the others. What can you tell us about this?
Master number 4, this is a little different. It doesn't have the elongated tail. And the tail, as you look at number 1 here, This is what we call the settling of the blood, gravitational flow.
Repeat the last word.
Settling of the blood, gravitational flow. So that is because when the blood hits, the excess blood runs down here and form a little small area. And so this area here is not included in the initial impact. So if we measure the width and the length, this will be excluded. We're going to stop at the point here, we can complete of an oval, or as close to a perfect oval as possible, to measure the width and the length here. So some stains, depending on the angle at which they hit, have excess blood running down here, and others don't. So this is also an oval shape. This is most likely less blood, and the excess blood is not running down to create a tail as we have in this one here, this, and all that. So, based on the location, most likely they are cast-off stain, and based on the elongated tail, I'm calling them a cast-off stain. But in indication, they were traveling horizontally, so some force had to be applied to the blood, hit the blood, and come back, and the blood being passed out results. So they all were traveling horizontally with some horizontal force before they hit the target. So that's why I can say with certainty that there was forceful bloodshed, because there was forceful bloodshed. Bloodshed means hit, travel horizontally. You cannot travel horizontally without force.
Let me ask
Not in this day, not every, yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you a question about the difference in shapes. Is it fair to say that a more elongated shape is more likely cast off, and the more rounded is it's more likely impact?
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
What he said, a more elongated shape like this one here, which means a smaller impact angle, be more consistent with the cast-off stain than one here, which has a smaller width, a longer width, and the width and the length are pretty much the same. So when you divide the width by the length here, this would probably turn into a 40-45 degree angle impact.
And it's your testimony that of these 4 stains, that all 4 of them are likely cast off?
Most likely cast off.
Okay. And that potentially 04, could it be an impact stain?
It could be impact stain too. But most likely cast off, and again, there's no 100% certainty, but what the only 100% certainty is that they were created by a forceful impact, either by hitting the blood or being swung by an object. So either way you look at it, these were caused by traveling horizontally, which means that they have initial velocity, and they hit the impact site, which we call a target, before they lose horizontal velocity. So that's why I can say with all certainty that these were created by a force. In other words, if they were falling vertically, the only force will be the force of gravity. And unless there is some wind or something like that, it will be falling vertically. So if somebody just walking around and bleeding or dropping blood, the blood will be falling vertically. And unless they swing like that, the blood cannot get on a vertical target.
Mr. Parker, I'm going to turn your attention to State's Exhibit 59. It's a 3-photo array. I'd like you to start with the upper photograph. Talk to us about what you see, and then as you come down the board, talk about the significance of the location of that particular blood stain.
These stains are a little higher, and you can see it's very close to the hinge. That's the reference point here. And these are more oval, tend to be more like a 90-degree angle. So when this begins to come around, you get a 90-degree angle. And then as it loses roundness and become oval, and the angles get smaller and smaller until they get very elongated, you get a 10-degree angle. So these here, I think, are most likely impact stain because you can see they're less oval, tending to be round, and the location from which the impact up here by the hinge. So it's more likely that the impact site was here, the impact occurred, and it traveled.
Objection to what you just said about the impact site, Judge.
Go ahead, sir.
If the tendency get come from the impact site.
This is in the classroom.
Objection.
Okay.
Non-responsive.
Do not speak to anyone other than the attorney.
Sorry about that. Out of classroom, Mr. Parker. Talk to us about whether this is an impact stain or a cast-off stain, and remind us what the definition of what impact is.
An impact stain or spattered blood is blood that received a forceful impact, and as a result of receiving the forceful impact, it travels horizontally or in any direction and is deposited on the closest target. So again, this is most like an impact stain that was created by a force. The force gave it kinetic energy for it to move horizontally to reach this target here, which is a vertical target.
And I noted in this photograph that the stain is actually deposited behind the hinge.
Right.
And I know that will be significant in a little while.
Okay.
And I want to come back to it, but I want you to know that as well, right?
Okay.
Okay. Now showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 55. Oh, 13, I'm going to stay with you. Excuse me. Give me just a second. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 58. Tell us about what you see in these photographs and the significance of them. You need to go back to this board
Yes,
to
okay.
see the location of them. We're looking at states
okay.
13 and 14.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. These were on the bifold door, and there are several of them close to
Hold on a second. Take a look again at where they were on 13 and 14 on the...
13 and 14. Oh, yeah, this is the door that, not the bifold.
Not the
door.
bifold. Yes, sir.
Sorry. Bifold door is this door, open door to the bathroom. Okay, so these are all small stains, and they were pretty close to each other, and so I think that these were impact stains. Again, they had to be traveling horizontally, hit the target, and the shape is determined by the angle at which it impacted that surface.
Now showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 55. Yes, 55. Starting in the upper left corner, describe to us what you see, and then let's move through the photographs in a clockwise orientation, discussing the significance of each. We have some larger enlargement photographs of each of the stains as we get to them.
This here is a cluster of very small stains. And having a cluster of small stains like that, it's most likely or it's consistent with an impact stain. Some of these isolated stains down here. Some of these stains down here, they're away from this impact stain, so they're most likely a cast-off stain because they didn't receive enough impact to travel to the wall like that. But they were all traveling horizontally, but the amount of force they received is less than the impact, and so it created this oval shape. So again, I will classify these stains up here as impact stains, and these here consistent with, most likely consistent with the cast-off stain.
And then let's look at each of the stains individually. Let's start with Master Bath 01, and we'll move in on that stain. What can you tell us about Master Bath 01 located in the lower portion of the photograph?
This stain here, you can see, before it dried, something moved to it and created a light area here. So this stain was disturbed. But again, you can see the oval shape, and this little portion down here, in my opinion, is a part of this stain because, as I said earlier, when there's enough blood, the blood not only hit, but the excess blood run down here and settle, so we call it, settle into the stain of gravitational flow.
And when you say that the stain was disturbed, would that be evidence of cleaning?
That could be an evidence of cleaning because, again, you can see something moved to the stain, but this was sort of almost dried. That's why it didn't lose the color. Because what normally happens, if there's a stain on the surface, it starts drying from the outside inside. So if one cleans it up before it's fully dry, one gets rid of the inner portion, but there's an outer ring which we call a gold stain that is left. And so in cleaning a blood stain, one has to make several movements over it to get the entire stain, because the phosphorus wipe just cleans the area inside that is not dried. But since it's dried from the outside, then you have to put a little more extra force to get rid of the entire stain.
And your opinion as it relates to Masterbat 01 is what? That someone attempted to clean it, but not enough?
Well, I think there's some movement through the stain to create this area here. So it could be possibly clean, or somebody came in contact with it. So there's some disturbing of this stain before it was fully dried.
Let me ask you about Masterbat 7 next. Let me ask you about Masterbat 7.
Number 7, so you can see that there's a stain here, but it's very light in color, which means that there was an attempt to either wipe it or something moved through it and just left a light area, because blood is bright red in color, and if it dries, it's still bright red. But when you have this lighter color, it means that something passed through the blood before it's fully dried, or some attempt was made to clean it up.
Give me just a moment, get the next exhibit. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 56. Same bulkhead on the edge of the tub and shower, but tell us what you see as you move from top to bottom and the significance of each of these things.
This here and this here.
And you're pointing to Masterbat number 2 in the middle of the board.
They don't have an oval shape or round shape, so this is referred to as a nondescript shape. In other words, a shape that can't be described because it's not an oval or round. So this is a nondescript shape again. The lightness in the color would indicate that it was disturbed before it was fully dried, but there was an attempt to clean it up, or something touched it before it was fully dried. So again, the nondescript shape, we cannot tell whether it's an oval or round, because things are usually oval or round. So it was an attempt to clean it up.
How about Masterbat number 3?
This here, if you can see, it's a nice oval shape. This is a nice shape to use to determine the width to length ratio. So we can determine the angle at which it's traveling to the horizontal plane, and we can measure the width to length and determine the angle at which it hit the vertical surface, which means that it had to be traveling horizontally to hit the vertical surface. And when we were traveling horizontally, it must have given an initial velocity which start moving.
Because it's an elongated stain, is it fair to say that it's a cast-off stain?
It could be consistent with a cast-off stain because of the elongated. And the reason why I say that, because cast-off stain usually start at 90 degrees and the angles get smaller and smaller. So you have more elongated stains from a cast-off, because as it hit the 90 degrees directly above, and the stains get less and less as it moves further away from the impact, from the object from which they were cast off.
Hold on just a minute, I'll get the next exhibit. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 57. 3-board array, or a 3-photograph array, starting with Masterbat number 4. If you'll walk us through top to bottom and give us the significance of each, please.
Again, this is a nondescript shape. It's not a square, it's not a rectangle, it's not a circle. So we refer this in blood as a nondescript shape. So, blood was deposited there. Most likely it was cleaned up. This here, a lot of times when it's bright red in color and it's nondescript, it could be a piece of the tissue from the bottom. Tissue meaning like brain tissue or something like that. So that's why we get a nondescript, because if it's just blood by itself and it impacts the surface as a liquid, it will form either an oval or circular shape. So nondescript shape. These are ovals.
Hold on, Masterbat number 5, the middle photograph in the array.
Again, we can see the outline of the shape here, and the discoloration, the light color means that something disturbed it. So that's why the color is light red as opposed to bright red.
And I think you circled the thing on the tub and tile. Did you mean to circle when you were demonstrating on board, did you mean to circle the thing on the wall?
Yeah.
You looked away and circled it. Sorry.
Again, I should circle this one here. And again, you can see, you can see the light color as opposed to the bright color. So again, this means an oval stain because you can see the outline oval stain. And something disturbed it before it was fully dried, so it lost the shape. And this lighter color coming out of the darker shade, which means that the blood moves from the darker area to the lighter area, as something disturbed it before it was fully dried.
I'd like you to take a look at master bath number 6, please. What's the forensic significance of master bath number 6?
This is pretty much the same thing too. This here was disturbed before it was fully dried. So again, the lighter coloration here would indicate that the oval shape is somewhat lost, or sexually oval shape is lost here, because some attempt was made to clean it up, or something interfere with the pattern and disturb it.
Hold on a second, I'll get you the next exhibit. Showing you what's been marked State's Exhibit 60. We'll start in the upper left-hand corner and move clockwise. Give us the forensic significance of each of the photographs, please. Okay. Well, the upper photograph, I'm sorry, is just a picture of the bathroom. Let's move to the upper right photograph.
This is, okay. This is back in the bathroom, and there were two small stains here, which I think were impact stains. When these stains are this low down here, they could be caused one of two ways. They could be caused by somebody standing there bleeding, and as the blood drops and bounces up and hits the target, it has to get rid of energy. So, when somebody's standing here and bleeding, the blood will drop and it bounces up.
Before you go any further, is that the case with these specific stains 15 and 16?
I was going to say that there is no indication that any pool in the blood was here. So I think that these here are most likely are consistent with impact stains hitting the target down there.
When you examined the surface and when Investigator Mott examined the surface, was there any blood located on the fascia below the cabinet?
Now, to my knowledge, there wasn't any blood below the cabinet here. So again, if there was blood dropping here and bounced up, you would have had blood here because this is extended a little further out. In other words, this is here and this is here. So if blood came up here, then there would be some blood, it was drop blood, creating a second impact, which we call a satellite spatter. There's some satellite spatter on the surfaces. So I think that these here were as a result of an impact spatter coming from a low point or area of origin.
And I'd like to turn your attention to stains 17 and 18. We'll have a closer photograph in a moment. In fact, let's get to it now. I'm showing you what's been marked State's Exhibit 61. If you would, please, tell us the significance of stains master bath 17 and master bath 18.
These were the only stains on the floor, and they were pretty close to the stains on the vertical front of the cabinet here. So I think these were also part of the impact spatter. This here is nice and oval. This here is nondescript. That is not oval, not round, it's not rectangular like that. And it's awfully thick and red. So my best guess would be it might have been a piece of tissue, but again, I don't know for sure, but I think that if it was just a regular drop of spot of blood, it would be oval or round, as opposed to, even like it has some thickness to it, as opposed to these not having any thickness. So I think that might have been a tissue, but I think they were all impact stains. So all these four stains, well, I think they were part of the same source, or part of the same impact.
As it relates to 17 and 18, by their shape, color, size, are you able to eliminate the fact that they are falling blood, meaning vertically falling blood, as opposed to impact or cast off blood?
If it was vertically falling blood, it would have been circular. So if it's oval and it's on the floor, it means that it's at a horizontal velocity and not all vertical velocity. But if one is walking and issuing blood, If they're walking fast, then you'll have an oval shape because the blood would hit the target before you lose all the horizontal velocity. If the individual is moving slow, then the blood will lose all the horizontal velocity and just fall vertically, so we get a circular shape. So that's one of the things we use to determine whether somebody is running away from the crime scene or walking away from the crime scene. The shape and the impact angle on a horizontal surface like the floor would give us some indication of how fast the individual is leaving the scene or moving away from the scene or moving into the scene or around the scene based on the shape of the stains on the floor.
Those are the last boards that I have to present at this time. I ask that you retake the stance, and I can ask you a few follow-up questions. Judge, if you could leave the screen active for us and go back up, I may return to some of the photographs.
Okay, Mr. Parker. When you visited the home with Investigator Mott sometime after the crime occurred, did you have the opportunity to take independent measurements within the home?
Yes, I did.
And based upon your measurements and the location of blood through the room there, what can you conclude about how many forceful bloodshed events there were within that particular area?
Objection, Judge. This has been ruled on.
Sidebar, please.
Mr. Parker, based upon the geographic location of the blood within the bathroom and on the closet door there, and the measurements that you took at the scene, what can you tell us about how many events occurred in this home?
Okay, based on the location, the direction of travel of the stains that I looked at in the bathroom, I think that they came from at least the impact stains. Can I say impact stains? The impact stains came from at least 3 different locations, and then the cast-off stain came from a separate location to the 3 impact stains. Impact spatter that created the spattered blood.
Okay. I'd like to call your attention back. I'm going to roll back on the slides for a minute, and I want you to look at the photograph associated with master bath number 9, the one behind the hinge. Is there something significant about this particular stain as it relates to your information and your opinion about how many events occurred?
The stains on the door jamb right next to the hinge would indicate that the door was open at the time that stain impacted that area there. So it means that would be a different location and direction of travel to the outer stains. So again, that is different to the outer stains because of the direction in which it is traveling, the location where it was.
Is it impossible for the blood to have landed in this position at master bath number 9 if the blood started inside the bathroom?
That's correct, because this is on the outside of the door as opposed to the inside where the outer stains were located.
Okay, so when you say that this can be separated from the other stains you're talking about are the ones inside the bathroom?
On the bathroom wall near the tub,
Okay.
and the stains in the very far back near the cabinet.
So based solely on the photograph of master bath number 9, can you tell us that one event occurred outside the bathroom, somewhere in the neighborhood of the bifold door on the closet?
That's correct, sir.
I'd like to move forward and look at the photograph here on the bulkhead right next to the bathtub. You've testified previously that it contains both impact and cast-off stains. Is this a second event occurring next to this particular bulkhead?
And we can see that the bulkhead, they make a 90-degree angle. So some of the stains are on this side, and some of the stains are on the 90 degrees. In other words, we have a 90-degree angle. So we have stains facing the head of the bathtub, and stains facing away from the bathtub. It's a 90-degree angle there. We can see what I'm talking about. So we have stains that are traveling in two different locations because they make 90 degrees to each other. They're 90-degree angle to each other.
And I'd like to also go to stains 17 and 18 on the bathroom floor. In association with 15 and 16 as well.
Go ahead, sorry, you have the question.
Does the direction of travel of the blood in this photograph make it geographically distinct from the other events that occurred in the bathroom?
That's correct, sir, because again, the wall is here and the stains are traveling this way. So it means that they're coming from some area behind the wall that separates the tub from the rest of the bathroom. So in my opinion, those are independent of the stains that were created on the edge of the head of the bathtub, where we have a 90-degree wall there. So I think they're independent of the other stains.
Okay. As it relates to all of the stains in the bathroom, I'm going to return to the photograph of the bulkhead there. As it relates to all of the stains in the bathroom, what can you tell? What is forensically significant about the height that they were located?
They're much higher, and I think if I recall, they were about 19 inches above I have the measurements here. But anyway, they're higher than the other stains. And when you have a group of stains that most of them are somewhat circular, it means that they're traveling horizontally. So that would indicate that the source of blood, the source of those stains, where they came from, is pretty much the same height as opposed to the ones that are low. So they're coming from a higher location. So again, the higher location, which means that the source of the blood, when impacted, was much higher than the ones that are on the floor, near the floor, where the source of the blood, at the time it was impacted, was closer to the floor.
Phrased another way, is it fair to say that as the source of the blood moved into the bathroom and further towards the cabinets,
That's correct, sir.
that it became lower to the floor?
That's correct, sir.
Meaning that the impacts were following the source of the blood as it got closer to the floor.
Overrule.
Sir?
That means the area where the blood came from, the impact site, if we can say the impact site, is lower than the impact site or where the blood came from for the stains on the wall. So they're separate heights, so the two impact, the one by the bathtub is higher than the one by the cabinet. So there are two sources which are different heights, and the one by the cabinets are much lower than the one closer to the head of the bathtub.
And again, is it fair to say that the impacts by the cabinet, that those impacts occurred on or very near the floor?
It's my opinion that they occur on and near the floor, based on the direction of travel and the shape of the stains. And the location of the stain on the cabinet also. So we have the location of the stains on the cabinet, the height, and the direction of travel compared or going along with those on the floor. They seem to be coming from some point of origin on or near the floor.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions at this time.
Okay, why don't we take our mid-afternoon recess? We'll take a 15-minute break, okay? We'll make it to, I'll tell you what, let's make it to 2:45. They take them to the lounge, so they're not, that's a small room.
For the state of Florida?
Beg pardon?
You've always testified for the prosecution.
That's correct, sir. I worked for FDLE and they wouldn't allow me to testify for the defense unless I was in court there.
And FDLE is the Florida lab that the prosecutors use in the state of Florida to test things and analyze things.
That's correct, sir.
Now, you're consulting right now, so you're getting paid to testify in this case?
That's correct, sir.
Now, when you went to the house, you went on December 11th, 2015.
Correct, sir.
That's a little more than 2 years from the incident.
Correct, sir.
Now, when you went there, the house was vacant, correct?
Correct, sir.
So everything was moved out of the house.
That's correct, sir.
And you went there after law enforcement conducted their internal investigations inside the house and did whatever they did, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Now, you reviewed some reports about the blood, correct?
Well, just the DNA reports, which are the type in, and yeah, so DNA. Mhm.
So you went to the house, you took measurements, but you didn't do any testing yourself on the blood drops or spots.
I never did when I worked for FDLE, so it's not something that crime scene people do, so.
Well, I'm asking you about what you did in this case. You never
That's
did any
correct, sir.
independent.
Correct, sir.
Now, let's talk about force.
That's correct, sir. Go ahead.
You mentioned in your direct examination of force being applied, which could take static blood and move it to a horizontal surface, and then also falling straight down. You use the word force a lot. You remember that?
That's correct, sir.
Now, when you're talking about force, you're talking about physics, correct?
That's correct, sir.
You're talking about moving one object to one location to another location, and how that object gets to that location.
That's correct, sir.
You're not talking about a criminal act, correct? You're talking about physics. You're not talking about a criminal act, correct?
That's correct, sir. Yeah.
So when you're talking about these events, you don't know when these events occurred, do you?
No, sir, I don't.
And you don't know who was involved in these events.
No, sir, I don't.
You don't know how these events occurred.
No, sir, I don't.
You don't know if instruments at all were used in these events.
No, I don't, sir.
And no one told you that there was any cleanup prior to you looking at the reports, did they?
I think I heard that there were attempts were made to clean up. I think I heard that, yeah. Mhm.
Now, blood pattern analysis, would you agree cannot tell you everything that happens on a crime scene?
That's correct, sir.
And most of the time, blood pattern analysis is used to support other investigations.
That's correct, sir. Yes, sir.
Most importantly, a report from a medical examiner
That's correct, sir, yeah.
or other photos that law enforcement may have on a scene.
That's correct, sir.
So the big drawback of blood pattern analysis is it can't tell you what exactly happened there unless you have other evidence, correct?
Oh, not all times, sir. There are cases that have testified that it's impact spatter because of the location and so on, and determine where the point of origin was. So
I'll let you finish.
without knowing what the medical examiner results were,
But in those cases, you had a point of origin.
I could determine the point of origin. That's correct, sir.
We don't have a point of origin in this case.
No, sir, but I could look at each blood stain and determine the path it took to get to where it was.
But here you're looking at the blood stains independently.
That's right, sir.
So we don't know if some blood stains were put here on day 1 or some blood stains were put here on day 10. We just don't know.
I don't know, sir, but I think from the crime scene reports, they looked at all those blood stains. I'm using the blood stains that were documented.
Yeah,
So when
you're using what you looked at, the photos that you looked at.
You let me finish?
But-
So
Go ahead.
So when I went there with Josh, the tapes were still in location, and those were the stains he had in his photograph. So the stains I looked at were the stains that he documented earlier without any changes.
But my question was, you're speculating or presuming that all those blood drops were put there at the same time. That's your presumption. You have to start there, don't you?
Well, I never made that presumption, so I'm just documenting the stains. Look at the stains that were documented, and based on the stains that were documented, I determined that they were caused by forceful impacts in order to get to the horizontal surface. So when I talked to Josh, those were the stains that he identified at the time he did the crime scene documentation, and I looked at them, and they were the same in the photograph. So as to whether they were put there before or after, they were put there before they were documented by the crime scene section.
And I would agree with you. They were put there before they were documented by the crime scene.
And to my knowledge, they weren't changed during the time they were documented by the crime scene and the time I got there.
Well, the photos were fresh. I understand that.
Yeah.
Now, you stated when on direct examination, when you went through all the blood spots, I kept hearing phrases like this. I think it's cast off. I believe it's impact. I can't determine if it's cast off or impact. It sounds like all your conclusions were just speculation because you're lacking certain information based on the drops themselves.
No, what I was talking about, that the stains were on a vertical target. The only way they could have gotten on the vertical target were as a result of forceful impacts. So that's what I'm testifying. So I'm saying that blood was in the general location, the blood impacted, as a result of the impact, it traveled to a vertical target, so it must have traveled a horizontal path to get the horizontal target. So they have an initial force. So I'm testifying to the fact that some of them were cast off, some of them were impact stains. It's sometimes tough to tell, but in either case, they traveled horizontally to a vertical target. And initially, the blood was on the surface, or whatever the source of the blood was. That surface was impacted to get some of the blood, and some of the blood was on an object that had blood on it that was swinging to create the cast-off stain. So all of them traveled in a horizontal direction to a vertical target.
Now, another way blood could be deposited is if you cut your finger and you flick your finger and blood that's force, and the blood could flow to an object and land on a surface, correct?
But that would be cast-off stain, which has the initial velocity.
And it's the same thing as if you have a bloody nose and you blow your nose, blood would be flowing then, and gravity would take it and it would arc and it would hit a surface.
Now, that would be different because that would be expirated blood, which is mixed with saliva from the airways. So once they dry, they'll be different to regular impact stains. Expirated blood, when it dries, it has a circle area in the middle, which is caused by the saliva. So again, expirated blood is different to impact spatter or cast-off stain,
But those are other ways that blood could get from the human body onto a wall or a door or a floor.
Yeah, but in this case, I didn't see any expirated blood where blood had blood stains with a void area in the middle. So I could rule out the fact that it came from expirated blood, and I could rule out the fact that they were drop blood because they were on a vertical target.
Now, you also mentioned that you thought that some of the blood drops could be tissue.
That's correct, sir.
But we don't know if they're tissue because you didn't test it to see if it was tissue.
No, I didn't test it, sir. But looking at if it is this plain blood, it would be in an oval or circular, and it does have some thickness because one can calculate the volume of a drop of blood. It's a mathematical calculation. But in this case, looking at some of those stains, which are nondescript, they're much thicker than the average spot created by liquid blood on the surface.
Now, let's talk about the surface where blood could hit in this case.
Right.
If blood hits a glass or a smooth tile surface, it's going to be more round and less, I guess, elongated or something like that.
If it hits at a 90-degree angle.
When blood hits wood, the blood is going to move differently when it hits a wood surface. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're going to have a nondescript shape because of the texture of the wood.
If blood hit linoleum, it's going to look differently than if it hit a piece of glass.
Well, it depends on the texture of the linoleum.
But what I'm getting at here is that when blood hits different surfaces, it's going to look differently because of the reaction of that surface to the liquid blood.
Yeah, on a smooth surface, you have a nice round shape, but that could be altered by the height too, because you could have a scalloping around the blood stain depending on the height from which it fell to. So
now-
that could be a factor too.
So now we're talking, besides the surface, we're talking about the height, and that's another factor to consider.
Right, but that's only in drop blood.
But you mentioned height when you're on direct examination, but without a point of origin, you're just speculating at that point.
Well, yeah, but if you look at the stains and the concentration of the stains, and some of them are circular, then you know that those stains impact at a 90-degree angle, because the point of convergence, the point of area of convergence is usually the same height as the point of area of origin.
Now, you testified also that some blood spots looked like they were wiped.
That's correct, sir.
Now, we don't know if they were wet and something dry went through them, or they were dry and something wet went through them, correct?
Yeah, but they still were white because they were disturbed.
Yeah,
In
they were
other words,
disturbed, yeah.
you can see some discoloration outside the scope of the stain.
Well, I'm glad you say disturbed, because that brings me to my next question. We don't know if something was intentionally wiped or something just went through it for another reason.
And I mentioned that there might have been attempts to clean the blood or something interfered with the pattern. So I was aware of that, so yes, sir.
So, we got to be careful when we say attempt to clean, inadvertent wipe, something went through it. Those are all possibilities that could occur on these blood spots.
That's correct, sir. But even though they were wiped, you still have the outline, the oval shape. So even though they were wiped, because once the blood impact the surface, it begins to dry from the outside. So if there's some wiping or some disturbance in the blood stain, normally one will have the outline of the blood, so one still can use the width and the length, even though the stains were wiped, because there is an outline of the stain, so one can use the width and length to determine the angle still. Even though I've had cases where the area was being cleaned up, and all we had was what we call a ghost shadow.
Mr. Parker, I'm not asking about your other cases. A question.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Parker, you could have, if there is a bloodletting incident, you could have stains, and they could all come back to their own area of convergence, correct?
No, sir. If you have that many stains, all of them would not receive the same force or impact. So in any pattern, I've created hundreds of patterns because I create patterns for my class, and I've never created a pattern that all the stains came back to the same point or area of origin.
So you've never had a case where all the stains came back to one area?
No, sir. The majority of the stains do, but not all of them.
Now, earlier you talked about when you get blood spots like this, you use a mathematical equation to determine the angle impact.
Yes, you could use a mathematical equation, or you could just use just the calculation. And that is divided by the length, and you can look up the results in the table. So, or you can look up on the perfect graph. So there are three ways of determining the impact. The perfect sine graph. Sorry, the perfect sine graph.
And that's on a calculator or a smartphone?
But it's calculated already. So one can use a perfect sine graph, one can use the tables, or one can use the second function sine to get the angle from the dividing the width by the length, which you gave a decimal.
Now, what purpose is an angle of impact without a point of origin?
Well, because we want to determine the angle at which that spot impacted the surface, even though we don't have several of them to come back to the same point of origin. And then we could look at the stains, and I could draw the imaginary line and look and see if all those stains would come to a point or area of convergence. I've done that several times.
But you couldn't do that in this case.
In this case, we didn't have enough stains to do the point or area of convergence. So I looked at individual stains and determined that they were coming from different sources.
Judge, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Any redirect?
No redirect. Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you. May the witness be excused? Statement?
Yes, I'm Sorry, yes, sir.
Defense.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay,
thank you,
step
sir.
down. Say, call your next witness.
State calls Garrett Morris, Deputy Garrett Morris.
You raise your right hand and be sworn, please. One moment, please.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you can have a seat.
Your Honor, before the testimony begins, we're objecting based on our earlier pretrial motion that you ruled on.
Yeah, the court has ruled on these issues before.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
Could you introduce yourself to our jury?
Garrett Morris, Volusia County Sheriff's Office.
And, sir, how are you employed with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office? I see you have a uniform. I assume you're a deputy?
Yes, sir. I'm a patrol deputy.
All right. And how long have you been employed as a deputy with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office?
5 years now.
All right. And you say your duties are, is that
Yes, sir.
right? And were you working in that capacity specifically on October the 23rd of 2013?
Yes, I was.
All right. On that date, did you happen to on to a house located at 317 Covent Gardens Place in Deltona?
Yes, sir.
All right. And why did you respond to that location?
I was the backup unit to Deputy Miller, who was on a well-being check.
Okay. Do you recall approximately what time you arrived on scene?
9:50 a.m., I believe.
All right. What other law enforcement officers were already on scene when you arrived?
When I arrived, Deputy Miller was the only other deputy on scene.
Now, when you arrived there, what did you see?
I saw the front door to the residence was standing open, and Deputy Miller was inside speaking with Mr. Toledo.
Okay. Now, at some point in time after you arrived, did you see Felicia Perez there?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do once you arrived at the house?
When I arrived at the house, I stood by inside the residence with Mr. Toledo.
Okay. And Deputy Miller was there as well?
Yes,
Now, when you entered the home, did you enter it through the front door?
I did.
Did you notice anything unusual when you walked through the front door?
When I first walked into the residence, I smelt a very strong odor consistent with pine sol.
Okay. Other than this odor, did you notice anything else unusual about the house itself? Or did it seem to be neat and tidy?
It was clean, neat and tidy.
Now, when you went into the house, what did you saw Deputy Miller and the defendant, what were they doing?
I believe Mr. Toledo was sitting on the couch, and Deputy Miller was inside conducting his investigation in reference to where Yesenia was located potentially.
Okay. And so what was sort of your role? When you got there and you're there as a backup, what was sort of your role once you arrived there?
My role was to stand by with Mr. Toledo while Deputy Miller could complete his investigation or conduct his investigation.
All right. And at some point, did you assist Deputy Miller and some deputies who had arrived on scene in looking around the house, and you were there for a well-being check to determine if there were folks within the home?
Yes.
And did you happen to, while you were doing that, did you happen to go into the master bedroom and the master bathroom?
Yes, I did.
Did you notice anything unusual in the master bedroom?
In the master bedroom, it was just folded clothing, nothing necessarily out of the ordinary. It wasn't overly messy or anything.
Okay. You notice a lot of personal items, personal belongings there in the house?
Yes, as there would be with any family residence.
Sure. Did you also go into the master bathroom?
I did.
All right. I mean, what observations did you make about the master bathroom?
In the master bathroom, there were a couple different observations I made. First, on the vertical face of the bathtub, there's a small mark, to be consistent with the color of dried blood.
All right, and when you say consistent with blood, you can't say for sure that it was blood, correct?
Correct.
All right. And did you make the observation known to someone involved in the investigation?
Yes, I did.
All right. What else did you happen to notice about the master bathroom?
I also noticed there was water in the grout lines outside of the shower and also over by the bathroom counter and sinks. The tiles themselves weren't necessarily wet, but there was a small amount of standing water in the grout lines.
Okay. And just so we kind of have, we've already seen some photographs already, so I think everybody has sort of a mind's eye picture of kind of what the bathroom looked like. You said one area with regard to the water was near the bathtub?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're walking into the entranceway into the bathtub was right there immediately to the right-hand side, is that correct?
Correct.
And there was area, you says, an area of standing water within the grout lines?
Yes.
And you said there was not really any water on top of the tile, just within the grout lines?
Correct.
All right, and where was the other area?
The other area was if you continue to walk straight into the bathroom, you come up to the counter and the two sinks. In between the two sinks, there was a void, like an empty area where there were no cabinets. In that area were plastic organizer drawers, and the area of wet grout was in front of those plastic drawers.
Okay, and how close to those plastic drawers, the cabinet area, did you see the wet grout lines?
Fairly close. I don't know a specific measurement.
All right. Now, after that, did you have an opportunity to look around the outside of the house there?
Yes, I did.
And did you find anything outside of the home?
On the right side of the residence, looking at the garage, on the right side of the house, there was a trash can. Inside the trash can, I located two canvas paintings, one of which appeared to have been cut and then ripped.
Did you observe any other items in the trash can?
Not anything that I recall, other than just trash.
And just to clarify that, the paintings you saw were there toward the top of the trash can?
Yes.
And there were other items underneath? You just didn't look at them, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you convey all these observations that you made to other investigators who were going to relay that to the crime scene investigators?
I did.
And what was your role from that point forward?
From that point forward, I assumed after, really, I was just a support role at that point. I didn't conduct any further, I didn't look around the house any further. I stood by around the perimeter of the residence and secured the scene.
Okay. You just helped maintain the scene, is
Yes,
that correct?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Judge, thank you. Good afternoon, Deputy.
Good afternoon.
Deputy, when you were in the master bathroom, the water you said you saw in the grout lines, that was fairly close to the front of the tub?
Yes, sir.
And did you notice a pair of men's underwear and a T-shirt on the floor in the bathroom too?
Not that I can recall.
What was not in the bathroom was any type of towel or carpet that one would maybe have in front of a tub, correct?
I don't believe there was a carpet in front of the tub.
So the water that you saw in the grout lines was you said, fairly close to the front wall of the tub?
Yes.
As if someone was getting in and out of the tub, water could come out and drip off of them right where it was, right there?
Potentially.
The other water you saw in the grout lines was near the sinks, correct?
Yes.
And there was very close to, if you went up vertically from the floor to the top counter of the sink?
In the middle, in between the two sinks, correct.
When you went outside, were you searching for anything in particular when you were outside?
No, nothing in particular, just anything that could potentially indicate where Yesenia had gone or where she may be.
So when you saw the trash can, you opened it up?
Yes, sir.
Besides what you observed on top, was there anything else unusual about that trash can?
Not that I can recall.
And you don't know when garbage day is in Deltona, do you?
Not for that particular location, no.
And to be clear, when you arrived, Mr. Toledo and Deputy Morris are already inside.
Deputy Miller?
Deputy Miller were already inside.
Yes.
And Deputy Paul was there?
Yes.
And Sergeant Rigo maybe came right after you or with you?
Yes, Deputy Paul and Sergeant Rigo arrived shortly after I did.
No further questions.
All right, thank you. Any retract? Thank you. You may step down.
Thanks, sir.
May the witness be excused. State.
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense.
Yes, Judge.
Thank you so much. State, call your next witness.
State calls Crystalia Morales.
You remain standing. Raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
Do you solemnly swear affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Make sure that you speak very loud into that microphone so that viewers can hear what you have to say, okay? And have a seat. Thank you. You're going to have to move a lot closer. A lot closer. There you go. Make sure you lean into the microphone, okay? May I proceed?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Way up into
Move
the
a lot
mic.
closer.
Come on.
Good afternoon.
There you go. Would you tell us your name, please?
I'm Crystalia Morales.
Okay. Don't lean back when you talk and come. Just stay up there. Just keep leaning. You're not going to be here long. Just keep leaning into it.
Okay.
Okay. Would you tell us how old you are, ma'am?
I'm 17.
Okay. And in which city do you currently live?
Daytona, Florida.
And what grade are you in school?
12.
Was there a time in October of 2013 that you lived over on Covent Gardens?
Yes.
And what was your address at that time?
314 Covent Gardens Place, Daytona, Florida.
Do you know the defendant, Luis Toledo?
Yes.
Do you see him here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Tell us what he's wearing, please.
Oh, what he's wearing?
Yeah.
A tie, striped tie, white jacket, cream shirt.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
With respect to your home, where did he live on that street?
Across my street. So this is my house, the street, his house.
So he's just directly across?
Yeah.
Okay. How long did he live across the street from you?
A couple years. I don't know for sure exactly.
Did you know his wife?
Yes, but not really well.
Okay. And did you know the children that lived in that house as well?
Yes.
Did you spend much time with the children?
Yes, we would go outside, we would see them, I would talk to them.
But
That's it.
you were probably too old for them to be your friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Ma'am, prior to your testimony here today, did you review some photographs?
Yes.
And approaching with what has not yet been marked. Hold on one moment, please. Ma'am, I'm approaching with what's been marked with 5 R's as the state's exhibit. It's 1 and 2, a composite exhibit. Do you recognize these 2 items?
Yes.
Okay, and did you in fact sign these 2 items just before court today?
Yes.
Okay. Does the disc contain photographs? Does the disc
Yes.
contain photographs
Yes, it
and
does.
maps? And are those maps printed on these pictures, on these pages?
Yes.
Do the photographs fairly and accurately depict items that will be significant during the course of your testimony?
Yes.
Judge, if there are no objections at this point, state remove RR, 1 and 2, and the evidence that states next.
Can you use just like a number, like 5 hours?
5 Rs, yes, sir.
5 hours, okay?
Yes, sir.
Is it just one exhibit
It's going to be 1 exhibit,
as a composite?
a composite.
Any objection?
Judge, the defense does object to half of that composite. Those are 3 photos of a knife, which you've already objected to.
Okay, subject to the court's previous ruling. Overrule.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Be admitted into evidence.
That'll be states 70A, 70B.
Thank you very much.
Judge, if I could use the screens?
I think they're on.
Okay. I just wanted to ask before I did. Thank you.
Let me know when you're ready.
Yes, sir.
You ready?
It's getting there. I don't know why it's not projecting. Hold on one second. Why is this not working? I need to function F8 it. Thank you. Okay. Ma'am, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit A on 70. Do you recognize this overhead map, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, and there's an item that's been marked 317 Covent Gardens. Is that where the defendant, Luis Toledo, lived with his family?
No.
No, he didn't live at 317?
Oh, wait, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. Where did you live with respect to that address?
The house right across from it.
The house with the white roof and the 2 cars in the driveway?
Yes.
Okay.
Speak up, okay?
Sorry.
Can you tell us where your bedroom was located within that house?
Yeah, so you see the L?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am.
I don't know how to explain it. The bottom of it, so the one closest to the 2-story house.
Okay.
The lower part, I don't know.
So your bedroom was in the lower part of the house as it appears in that photograph?
Yes, like the opposite side of the garage, so
Okay. And was your bedroom on the front side of the house or the back side of the house?
front side.
Did it face the street, Covent Gardens?
Yes,
When you looked out the window, could you see the defendant's house, Luis Toledo's home?
yes.
Okay. As it relates to the living arrangements in the home, did anyone share that bedroom with you?
Yes, my sister,
Okay, and what's her name?
Mariana Morales.
Okay. And how old is she, ma'am? Older or younger?
She's younger.
Okay. On October 22nd, 2013, were you sleeping in that bedroom?
Yes,
Was your sister also sleeping in that bedroom at that time?
yes.
Okay. During the evening hours, the night hours, did you hear something that caused you concern?
Yes, so I was half asleep and I was woken up.
What time did this event occur, do you think?
Can I review my...
Sure, review your notes if you like.
I was woken up like around 12:30. Don't really know, it was estimate because I didn't have a clock in my room. I was laying in bed and I heard a woman saying, "Help me." So I turned to my sister and asked her if she heard that. She said yes. I laid in bed a little bit longer, heard it, so I decided to go to my window to investigate. I didn't see anything, so I didn't think much of it. I was half asleep, so I went back to sleep.
How many times did you hear a woman saying, "Help me"?
I was woken up by maybe 2 or 3 times. I turned to my sister, asked her, she said yes, so I laid in bed for a little bit longer and I heard it 2 or 3 times more, and that's when I got up and checked. That's it.
Could you tell where the voice was coming from?
From the street, or across the street.
And are you able to distinguish the voice of a woman versus the voice of a child?
A woman,
You think it was the voice of a woman?
yes.
How loud was it?
It was loud enough for me to hear it clearly in my bedroom.
When you looked out the window, do you remember whether there were any cars in the driveway across the street?
No,
Did you call the police after you heard this?
No,
What did you do?
I went back to sleep.
Was the yelling significant until you saw the police the next day?
Yes, that's when I thought it was significant. Honestly, we had some teenagers around our block that would always stay out till late. So once I checked my window and I didn't see anything, I just thought it was just some kids fooling around, and I was tired, half asleep, so I went to sleep after that.
Okay. The next morning, did you go to school?
Yes,
Okay, and how do you get home from school typically?
I used to walk home.
Okay, and did you walk home on that particular day?
Yes,
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit B within this exhibit. It's State 70. Do you recognize this map, ma'am?
yes,
Okay. And you see 317 Covent Gardens in your house across the street, correct? Is your walk route pictured somewhere within this map?
yes.
Could you describe to us which direction and where you walked on the way home?
So there's a biking lane off of Doyle. I would walk, where the lake is, along that side of the road, and then I would cross to enter my subdivision from there.
Okay, you're going to have to help us find Doyle, okay? I don't see Doyle written on that
I'm
map.
sorry, it's DeBerry Avenue.
Okay, DeBerry Avenue, the main drive within that map?
Yeah,
And you said it's something about a lake.
the lake that you see there.
That's the green area there that's not trees,
Yeah.
near the
pond.
cul-de-sac?
Just that pond right there.
Okay.
I don't know.
So you walked along DeBerry Avenue, and then which side, the south side or the north side of DeBerry Avenue? There's a north indicator in the bottom of the map there.
Sir,
See the inn in the bottom right corner?
no. Oh, wait, yes.
It points north?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, did you stay on the north side of DeBerry or the south side of DeBerry?
South side. So I walked south.
Okay, so you walked along the south side of DeBerry, along the tree line next to the lake.
Yes.
And then as you got closer to home, when did you cross the street?
That cross right there. What's the name of it?
Where Coventry Estates meets DeBerry?
Yes.
And then did you proceed down Coventry Estates and turn onto Covent Garden?
Yes.
That's a yes?
Yes.
Is that how you walked that particular day?
Yes.
Okay. Did you walk home alone?
No.
Who did you walk home with?
Group of friends.
And along your walk route, did you find anything?
Yes.
Okay. On October 23rd, 2013, what did you find on the way home from school?
I found a knife.
I'm approaching with what's been marked State's Exhibit D for identification purposes. Open the item and show you what's inside. Do you recognize that item, ma'am?
Yes.
Is that the knife that you found on the way home?
Yes. Yes.
Judge, subject to the earlier objections of defense, State would move State's D into evidence of State's next.
Okay. Is there not an ID on there already?
There is. ID D.
Yeah, okay. Subject to the court's previous ruling, the item will be admitted into evidence.
Thank you.
State 71.
For the record, I think you should probably.
Judge would object to the introduction of the knife into evidence of this.
Okay. And like I said, we've had a hearing on this matter, so.
And the State would ask the court to allow the witness to publish both the knife and the photos during this portion of the testimony.
How do you wish to do that?
Open the box and hold it up.
Okay.
Ma'am, would you hold this item up for the jurors to see, please?
Just to the viewers over
Jury,
here.
not the gallery. Can you turn it a little bit, please? Right this way. Ma'am, I'm showing you what's been marked as C on States 70, the photograph. Is this how you originally found the knife, within its sheath?
Yes,
Okay, and upon finding the knife, what did you do with it?
I picked it up.
Okay, and did you pull it out of its sheath?
Yes.
Did you expose it so it looks more like States D?
Yes, it was like a slip out, and then
Lean into the microphone.
I slipped it out, and then I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, and then I slipped it back in.
Had you ever seen this knife before?
No,
Did you have any idea who it belonged to?
no.
Okay. As you proceeded along your walk route on the way home, did you turn down Covent Gardens and see a police presence on your street?
Yes.
Good point, thank you. Ma'am, before we get to down your street, Mr. Johnson reminded me, could you tell us exactly where you found the knife with respect to this photograph?
Yes, so where the pond is, there's like this little opening in the beginning. Coming down, it was in that area, in the grass.
The grassy opening that's there by DeBerry Avenue?
Yes, it was closer to the sidewalk.
And you were able to see it as you were walking on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And hold on one second, okay? I'm going to bring you the printed copy of this map and a red Sharpie, okay? I'd ask that you draw a circle around the grassy area where you found this knife. Make it a big circle so everybody can see it, okay? See it, okay? Okay. Can you put your initials there next to that circle? Thank you.
I need to see it as well. Go ahead and show it to them.
Okay. Ma'am, do you mind also circling your house in this picture? And if you would, while you're at it, just draw a line the way that you walk home every day. Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Can I see it, please?
Yes, sir. Be glad to.
Okay. You want to display it to the jury. Did you see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, why don't you just go ahead and
Pass it.
give it to the deputy.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and have the jurors take a look at it so everything gets in proper context. Just look at it and pass it down, okay?
Thank you, sir.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, as you walked home, did you keep this knife with you?
Yes,
How did you carry it to your house?
it was in my book bag.
Okay. In addition to you, did anyone else touch that knife?
Yes, my friends touched it. My friends touched it. The knife. Touched it. Sorry.
And then you put it in your backpack
Yes,
and you carried it home
yes.
to your house? Okay. As you came down your street, did you notice a police presence on the street?
Yes, my whole street was closed off.
Did you talk to one of the officers?
Yes,
Did you tell them who you were and where you lived?
yes,
Did you give them the knife?
yes.
Okay. Some point that afternoon, did you also tell the officers about the screams that you had heard the night before?
Yes.
Judge, I don't have any other questions. I'd tender the witness.
Very well. Any cross-examination?
Thank you, Judge. Very briefly. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Morales, do you remember being interviewed by a detective on October 23rd, 2013 about what you heard?
Yes.
And that detective was an Investigator Welch?
I don't remember the name.
Okay. But you were interviewed?
Yes.
And was a parent with you?
My father.
All right. You remember her, the investigator, asking you what time you heard the scream, "Help me"?
Yes.
And you told her it was around 12:30?
Yes.
And you also remember talking to me in January 2016?
No.
Okay. You remember having your deposition taken at the state attorney's office?
Yes.
You remember being in a conference room and maybe someone who looked like me was asking you questions?
Okay, yes.
And Mr. Will was there? Mr. Will, you remember him?
Yes.
Okay. And there was a court reporter there? It may have been that court reporter.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember me asking you what time you heard the scream, "Help me," during that deposition?
I don't remember that deposition
All right.
exactly.
Well, if I told you, you told me you heard it around midnight, would that be correct?
Yes.
When you heard the scream, you didn't think much of it because you had neighbors from New Jersey that had kids that were always playing outside?
Yes.
And you didn't, in fact, you didn't even tell your parents about it?
No.
And you said it was a female voice you heard?
Yes.
But you can't identify the voice?
No.
And before you heard the scream, you didn't hear any loud noises or bangs or breaking of windows or glass or anything like that?
No.
And then after you heard it, you didn't hear anything else?
No.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yeah, just one question, Judge. Ms. Morales, at the time that you heard the screams, did you have a clock in your bedroom?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any recross?
No, Judge.
May the witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you may step down. Thank you. State, call your next witness.
Ariana Morales?
Judge, the defense has an objection. May we have a sidebar while the witness comes in?
Yes, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You can have a seat. All right, I want you to lean forward and be as close as you can to the microphone when you speak so the viewers can hear what you have to say, okay?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you tell us your name, please?
Ariana Morales.
And how old are you, ma'am?
Queen.
In October of 2013, were you living at 314 Covent Gardens and sharing a bedroom with your sister, Crystalia?
Yes.
On the night of October 22nd, did you hear a woman or did you hear someone screaming?
Sounded more like a teenager.
Okay. Could you tell us about the circumstances that this event occurred?
We were in my room. I think Kriti was falling asleep. I was wide awake, and I heard a girl yell, help me, 2 to 3 times at max. And it was pretty clear and loud. And I heard, it sounded like it was coming from the front of the house.
At the time that you heard this, did Luis Toledo and his family live across the street from you?
Yes.
When you say that it sounded like a teenager to you, how are you able to distinguish the age of a person's voice?
It sounded, I don't really know how to explain it. It's just because there were kids that played around there at night often, and it didn't really sound any different to me.
Okay. So because there were kids that played there often, you thought it was maybe them?
Yes.
Okay. How many times did you hear this person yell, "Help me"?
2 to 3 times at max.
Do you know what time it was?
It was around midnight.
Okay. You didn't have a clock in your room though, right?
No.
Okay. Could have been later, could have been a little earlier? Just your estimation, it was around midnight, right?
Yeah.
Were you awake when the screaming started?
Yes.
So you weren't waking up to you were already awake?
I was already awake.
Okay. Before you saw the police on your street the next day, did you report this to anyone?
No.
Okay. Did you and your sister talk about it as the screaming was occurring?
I heard it, and she asked me, did you hear that? And I was like, yeah, it's probably nothing though. And that was pretty much it. We didn't talk about it too much.
Okay. The next day when the police were on your street, did you and your sister report this screaming to the police?
Yeah, she came up to me and she reminded me of what we heard the other night. And she, said maybe we should go report it to the cops. And so that's what we did.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Any cross-examination?
Good afternoon, Ms. Morales.
Good afternoon.
Before you heard the scream, did you hear any other noises outside, any loud bangs or anything like that?
No.
And then after you heard it, did you hear any other noises outside?
No.
You didn't hear any car doors slam or any other bangs or yells?
No.
Did you hear any cars squealing away or anything like that?
No.
No further questions. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
No redirect, Judge. So we-
Thank you. She can be excused. Defense?
Yes, Judge.
Thank you. You may step down. State, call your next witness.
Can we approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir. All right, folks, the state indicates to me that perhaps this is a more logical break to take at this point in time because